Cole thought that someone was chasing Lucia, so he lowered his voice and asked, "Did they see you come here?" "No," Lucia answered. "Then what are you shushing me for?" Cole asked. "What if your voice is too loud and the neighbors understand that there's someone else here? Then if Dalen's people came by, they would know that you took me in." Lucia rolled her eyes. Walking towards the sofa, Lucia asked, "Do you have anything to eat here? I'm starving." "There are still some leftovers from the restaurant," Cole said. "Really? Great, I want to eat." After the food was served, Lucia started wolfing it down. Cole didn't say anything as Lucia stuffed her face with food and just let her eat her fill. After Lucia finished, she said, "Thank you, Cole." Cole shrugged. "I was going to treat you to a meal anyway, so there's no need to thank me. I'm just glad you made it here safely." "Well, that's not quite true," Lucia said as she busied herself with eating more rice. "What do you mean?" Cole asked, worried. "I was able to come here mainly because Spencer let me go. I think he must have helped me out because of his fondness for you," Lucia explained. "Spencer found you?" Cole was shocked. "Yep. I suspect he had tracked me down pretty quickly. He told me to return to Dalen's side within 3 days," Lucia recounted. "Why can't he just pretend that he didn't see you?" Cole asked. "Do you not understand? If I don't go back after 3 days, Dalen will definitely suspect that Spencer is protecting me," Lucia explained. "I guess that makes sense. Will you go back in 3 days?" Cole asked. "What kind of terrifying thing did Dalen do that made you want to knock him out?" Lucia rubbed her nose. "He touched me." Cole could not believe it. "That's it?" "It's a serious thing," Lucia argued. "He's your husband, and he didn't cheat on you." Cole did not understand what Lucia was thinking. "I just don't want to." After Lucia finished eating, she picked up her fork and plate and took them to the kitchen. Cole followed her while carrying his own plate. "Why aren't you willing? I think it's normal for him to want to touch you." Lucia bit her lip and looked towards the ceiling. After a moment of hesitation, she looked at Cole and said, "He's a pervert in that aspect." "Huh?" Cole was dumbstruck, then asked in puzzlement, "But it's not your first time being with him." "That's right, but I didn't see it before. Do you think this has anything to do with his amnesia?" Lucia guessed. "Didn't you guys sleep together after Dalen lost his memories?" Cole asked. Lucia's face blushed uncomfortably. "Yes, but this time it's more serious." "I didn't expect this." Cole was shocked. Lucia ignored him and walked out of the kitchen. After Cole recovered, he followed with a gossipy face. "How is he? Tell me everything." Lucia rolled her eyes at Cole and didn't answer. Dalen returned from the hospital back to the mansion. Victoria's heart tightened when she saw Dalen's stern expression. She didn't know what had happened. She carefully stepped forward. "Dalen, you're back? Have you eaten?" Dalen's gaze fell on Victoria's face. "I already told you not to wait for me to come back tonight." "I didn't wait for you. I was here because I couldn't sleep," Victoria said. Dalen didn't say anything else and just went to his study. Victoria stood in the hall in a daze, feeling very disappointed. She felt that she could never truly gain Dalen's heart. Hadn't she done enough? Victoria was depressed, but she didn't dare to go into the study room to look for Dalen. She turned around and went upstairs. The moment she went up, she saw Spencer, who was headed to the study. Victoria was stunned. What was going on? Spencer stood in front of the study and respectfully knocked on the door. A low voice came from inside. "Enter." After Spencer pushed the door open and entered, he saw Dalen sitting behind his desk with a dark and gloomy face, with a cigarette in his mouth. Dalen raised his black eyes and looked at Spencer sharply. Spencer looked at the ground. "I'm sorry, Mr. Patrick. I haven't found the young mistress yet." "Can't find her?" How many people did you send to look? Dalen's eyes immediately turned vicious. Over 200 people, Spencer answered. Send more people, Dalen demanded. Yes, sir. When Spencer was about to leave, Dalen's black eyes turned sharp. With a cold voice, he said, Spencer, you're putting all your expertise into this search, right? The meaning behind the question was obvious. I wouldn't dare to do anything less. Spencer nodded slightly. She has to be here, in this room, within 24 hours, Dalen ordered. Spencer was stunned. This was much faster than he thought. Is there a problem? Dalen's black eyes were cold and sharp. Spencer replied, No. Then he went out. After Spencer left, he took out his phone. Cole and Lucia were on the sofa watching TV when Cole's cell phone buzzed with a text message. He immediately showed Lucia the text. Lucia saw Spencer's message to Cole. Mr. Patrick wants Lucia back within 24 hours. Make sure that she's prepared. Tomorrow? Lucia frowned. Seems so, Cole said. I think Spencer did his best. Lucia said depressingly, I know. If Spencer doesn't find me within 24 hours, that would be suspicious. It's just that I didn't expect him to want me back so soon. Cole was concerned. Then what should we do? You won't be able to get out of the city in just 24 hours. I'm sure all the stations and airports are being monitored. Dalen only needs to make a phone call and no one would dare to let you pass. It's too simple. Lucia wailed and buried her head in the sofa. This was so annoying. What should I do? He didn't even want me, but now he's the one who wants me back. Can he let me go? Suddenly, Lucia thought of something and turned to Cole. Ask Spencer if Victoria is in the mansion. Cole didn't know why Lucia asked that, but he sent a message to Spencer asking about whether Victoria was still in the mansion. Not long after, Spencer answered. Cole hesitantly looked at Lucia as he read the contents of the message. Lucia could tell without asking. Although this made her feel a bit disappointed, at this moment she was actually hoping that Victoria was still in the mansion. Lucia? Victoria is in the mansion, Cole said as he looked at Lucia's expression. Good. Then I'll go back to the mansion tomorrow. If Victoria is in the mansion, it'll be better, Lucia decided. Are you saying that since Victoria is in the mansion, Dalen will pay more attention to her and not harass you? Cole asked. Lucia answered, Something like that. She thought it would be better to turn herself in. Taking the initiative might help Dalen not be as mad at her. The next morning in the mansion, Dalen and Victoria were at the dining table. Dalen's gaze fell on the breakfast in front of him. He asked Victoria, How long has it been since you've gone back home? Victoria, who was eating, was stunned for a moment. She immediately understood Dalen's intention. With a forced smile on her face, she said, I also feel that it's been a long time since I've gone back. I might go back today to check in with everyone. Good idea. Dalen did not say anything more. Later, Victoria went home alone. When Catherine saw her, she was taken aback. Why are you here? I came back to see you. Victoria hugged Catherine. Looking at her expression, Catherine instantly felt that it wasn't that simple. Dalen told you to leave, right? Do you know what's wrong with you? Catherine asked bitterly. What? Victoria asked. You're not ruthless enough, Catherine answered. Victoria lowered her head and did not say a word. She had thought that her gentleness and consideration would make Dalen focus on her. But it didn't work. She wondered what was happening in the mansion. Throughout the morning, Lucia didn't go anywhere. She just wandered around Cole's apartment. She felt so fidgety. Her phone rang. It was Cole. She answered, What is it? You're still at my apartment? Cole asked. Yeah. Lucia collapsed onto the sofa, dispirited. When are you planning to go? Cole persisted. The sky isn't even dark yet. Didn't Spencer send that text yesterday at around 9 o'clock? When you come back, we'll have a meal together. Lucia wanted to delay this for as long as possible. All right, then, Cole sighed. In the evening, after Lucia finished her meal, she used her phone to call Dalen, but she hung up before the phone started to ring. What's wrong? Cole asked as he watched her. I can't call him. If I call, Dalen will definitely know that I'm at your place, since that would prove that I got my phone back from you. Isn't that indirectly telling Dalen that Spencer is protecting me? Lucia put down her phone and said, Forget it. I'll take a taxi to the mansion right now. It's only 7 o'clock, Cole said. It's much better for me to turn myself in than to wait for Spencer, Lucia reasoned. Lucia was in no hurry to get out of the taxi when it arrived at the mansion. It had been a long time since she had been here. Suddenly, she was so scared. She decided that she might as well make a call to see if Dalen was still in a fit of rage. Lucia panicked as she dialed the number and waited. A few seconds later, the call connected. Dalen did not make a sound, but Lucia knew that he was definitely listening. Dalen, I've returned to the mansion. You shouldn't be angry anymore, right? I couldn't help it. I was scared. I was afraid that I would get hurt, so I knocked you out because of instinct. Lucia gave an excuse. Are you testing me? Dalen's cold voice sounded. No, I just hope that you won't be angry. You know I can't bear for you to be angry and hurt my body. Lucia paid the driver and got out of the car. She could not help but sweat profusely. You didn't hurt me when you smashed my head, but do you think I'll spare you? Dalen's dangerous voice sounded again. Lucia felt her eardrums twitch when she heard his low, intimidating voice. I'm already back. What else do you want? Should I run again? Really, if you want to scare me, I'll turn around and run, Lucia said seriously. You think that you can run away? Dalen sneered. Why can't I run away? If I didn't come back by myself, you never would have. As Lucia was speaking, she felt that something wasn't right. She heard the sound of an engine and turned around to take a look. Dalen's car appeared in front of her. Behind it were the bodyguards' cars, dark and intimidating. Dalen hung up the phone, and Lucia lowered her phone away from her ear. She knew that Dalen was staring at her. Sure enough, she couldn't get away. When Lucia saw the car approaching, she immediately dodged and stood by the side of the road. Her heart ached. What could she do? There was no way to escape. Lucia restrained her desire to run away and stood there. When the car door opened, Dalen saw Lucia's submissive look. The anger in his heart could not help but rise. Suddenly, the door slammed shut again, and the car drove away. After the cars had all gone, Lucia looked around in disbelief. She had thought that Dalen was opening the door for her to get in. But then he drove away just like that? Why didn't he give her a ride? The driveway was very long, and it would take her more than 20 minutes to reach the mansion. She could only resign herself to her fate and started walking to the mansion. She remembered that with Victoria here, she would have some protection, right? Lucia chuckled, thinking that she actually relied on Victoria to ensure her own safety. When she walked into the hall, Dalen was sitting on the sofa with a cigarette between his fingers. Smoke floated in the air around Dalen, making his face look more dangerous than ever. The coldness in Dalen's black eyes was so clear. Lucia wanted to turn around and run. She dragged her weak legs towards the sofa. Then she stood still. Can't you walk faster? Dalen's face turned cold. Lucia rolled her eyes. The road was long. I'm tired. It took you 20 minutes to walk a distance that should only take 10 minutes, Dalen argued. Isn't that because you have long legs? You only need 10 minutes, but I need 20, Lucia reasoned. You still dare to talk back? Dalen's eyes darkened. Lucia pursed her lips but didn't say anything. She looked around and only saw John and Edward. She was in no mood to respond to John's smile. She wanted to find Victoria. However, she didn't see Victoria. Was she upstairs? Dalen looked at the expression on Lucia's face and knew who she was looking for. "She's not here," Dalen said. Lucia snapped back to reality and looked at Dalen. "Victoria went home?" "Didn't you ask for it? Wasn't that one of your conditions?" Dalen sat lazily on the sofa with a cold expression. No way, Lucia thought. If Victoria was gone, she would no longer have any safety net here, and she had nowhere else to go. Lucia looked at Dalen with hope. "Since you agreed to the first two, then the last one—" Dalen interrupted her. "Don't even think about it." Lucia was terrified and said with grief, "You have to respect me, don't you?" "In this area, there is no need for respect between husband and wife. I can do whatever I desire." Dalen smiled. Lucia cursed inwardly. If she didn't have a child to worry about, she would have fought him. "I'm a bit sleepy. I'm going back to my room to sleep." Lucia didn't want to face Dalen anymore. She turned around and headed upstairs. When she returned to her room, everything was exactly the same as when she left. The servants would clean every day, but no one had touched anything in that room. Lucia walked over to the desk and opened the drawer. The agreement that Dalen had torn to pieces was still in there. Lucia closed the drawer and sat down on the sofa. Everything here made her feel lost and depressed. The sound of knocking on the door frightened Lucia so much that she immediately stood up. "Madame?" John's voice came from outside. Lucia heaved a sigh of relief. When John entered, he looked at Lucia happily. "Madame, you've returned. I'm so happy. That rotten Victoria has also already left." Seeing John's enthusiasm, Lucia couldn't help but smile. "I didn't quite expect myself to come back," Lucia said truthfully. Lucia thought that Dalen would not care if she left. Why did he chase Victoria away and force her back? She still couldn't figure it out. "This means that Mr. Patrick cares about you. He wants you to be the only mistress in the mansion, and it is true that no one else can replace you," John said emotionally. Lucia was amused by John's sentiment. "What makes you think that?" "Instinct," John said certainly. "Ah, right. Mr. Patrick told me to tell you to go to sleep in the main bedroom within 10 minutes, John continued. "I can't sleep here? There's no leeway at all?" Lucia did not want to sleep with Dalen. John shook his head hesitantly. Seeing that Lucia seemed to be worried, he quickly said, "Shouldn't couples sleep together? It is amazing how Mr. Patrick cannot bear to be without you." Lucia didn't want to say anything. She and Dalen were probably the weirdest couple in the world. Knowing that John was trying to comfort her, Lucia didn't bother to argue. After John finished conveying Dalen's message, he added, "Madame, just obey Mr. Patrick and you'll be fine. No one will be more outstanding than Mr. Patrick. Besides, you can't fight with him either." Saying that, he left. Lucia stood there in a daze. She was shocked by John's words. She paced around the room anxiously. 10 minutes, 10 minutes, 10 minutes. She had to go to Dalen's room in 10 minutes. Would he at least let her breathe when she went back? Probably not. He would definitely treat her like a beast later. Lucia could only imagine what would happen, and her body trembled. She needed to think of a way to deal with Dalen. Lucia's gaze paused on the bathroom door. A smile rose on her small face as she thought of something. Lucia entered the bathroom and opened the drawer. When she saw the period pads, her eyes immediately lit up. She took out the pad and tore it open. But then she was at a loss again. Dalen was clever and scary. She could tell him that she was on her period, but he might even check it directly to make sure. But there was no red paint. Lucia's eyes searched the room, then fell on her own thin white fingers. At this point, she couldn't care less about pain. Lucia stuffed her fingers into her mouth, closed her eyes tightly, and bit down with all her might. Ah! It hurts, it hurts, it hurts, it hurts, Lucia yelped. Lucia's fingers were dripping with blood. She quickly used her pad to catch it. After putting blood on the pad, Lucia put it in her underwear. Now that it was done, she would have to deal with her fingers. She rinsed them in cold water until there was no more blood. Then she walked towards Dalen's room. Her fingers were throbbing. She would do anything to deter Dalen from touching her. When Lucia arrived at the door of Dalen's room, she raised her hand and knocked on the door. However, before her hand could touch the door opened. Lucia met Dalen's dark expression. Lucia subconsciously retreated a few steps. What? I had a stomachache and went to the bathroom. Dalen didn't say anything and didn't move. He just looked at her coldly. Lucia understood and entered with her head lowered. She looked around Dalen's bedroom. It was spacious and extravagant. This was a place where no woman had ever been. You don't want me to stay here, do you? Lucia asked Dalen. Dalen's face darkened, and he said stiffly, Didn't I tell you to sleep here? What do you mean? Lucia was puzzled. Satisfy me, and then you can go back to your room. Dalen approached Lucia in an elegant, beast-like manner. Lucia tensed up and retreated, step by step. The heel of her foot slammed into the sofa. Shocked, her heart skipped a beat. She turned around and Dalen's firm chest was almost touching hers. Lucia forced herself to look up at Dalen's unfriendly expression. Dalen, I'm just afraid that I can't satisfy you. Lucia looked at him in shock. Are you praising my physical strength? Dalen teased. Yeah. Lucia tried to look shy. Don't worry, Dalen whispered in her ear. Lucia was stunned. Once I'm done, you'll never want to get out of my bed. Dalen looked down at her evilly. Lucia forced out a smile. Actually, I also want to, but I'm afraid not today. It's my period. Dalen's eyes turned slightly sharp. It's true, Lucia said, while carefully observing Dalen's expression. Dalen looked at her with a dark face, and Lucia shivered. When Dalen didn't move, she cautiously slipped away from Dalen's body. After moving far away from him, Dalen grabbed her wrist. Lucia was astonished. Dalen threw her onto the sofa. Ah! Lucia cried out in alarm. Dalen, be gentle! Dalen loomed over her, causing her to freeze on the spot in fright. What are you doing? I already told you that I can't do this tonight. Please, let me go. Lucia was on the verge of collapse. Dalen's hand held Lucia's jaw. His eyes flashed dangerously as he stared at Lucia like a wolf. Let me see if you're telling the truth. When the truth was exposed, his eyebrows furrowed. Lucia nervously pursed her lips and carefully looked at Dalen's expression. I'm not lying to you, okay? Lucia said. I told you when I came in that I had a stomachache. When I went to the bathroom, I found out that I was on my period. Lucia stiffly smiled. You're out of luck. But it doesn't matter. You can touch me when my period is over. I won't refuse you then. Dalen let go of her and stood up from the sofa with a cold expression. His posture was still very oppressive, and the aura around his body carried the sharpness of a displeased person. Lucia heaved a sigh of relief, almost collapsing on the sofa. She felt that she was really clever. Then, can I go back to my room? Lucia asked. She had to be careful at all times in order to ensure her own safety. Did I tell you that you could go back to your own room? Dalen tilted his body and looked down at her maliciously. What do you mean? Lucia asked. When she saw Dalen's gaze, her chest tightened. Lucia stood up nervously. I better go back to my room. Ah! Dalen picked her up. Dalen, can't you wait a few days? Lucia cried. Dalen lifted her face and kissed her lips. Dalen broke away from her and whispered hoarsely, "I can't even wait a second. Can't you see?" Lucia was still in a daze when she was thrown onto the bed. "Dalen!" Lucia looked at Dalen, who had seemed to lose his mind. Dalen moved forward like a beast, his fingers holding her jaw. "If you smash me with anything ever again, I'll chop off your hand," he threatened. Lucia stared at him nervously. I won't. It's just, I haven't taken a bath yet." "No need to wash," Dalen said. "But—" Lucia was shocked by Dalen's impatience. Lucia was lying on her back with the ceiling above her, with him above her. Lucia closed her eyes with a blush. It was already the latter half of the night when Dalen let go of her. Lucia got up from the bed, weak and dizzy. Then Dalen said in a lazy and forceful manner, "Sleep here." "Didn't you say that I could go back to my room when it was over?" Lucia felt that it was better not to sleep in the same bed as Dalen. "Who said it's over?" Dalen asked. The next morning, Lucia was forcefully woken up by Dalen. The lack of sleep made her groan uncomfortably, but it still couldn't stop Dalen's beastly personality. Finally, Dalen was satisfied and got out of bed. Lucia had no choice but to get up and go to the bathroom to wash up. Lucia's expression was dark as she bathed. After washing up, she walked towards the door of her room. Without looking at Dalen, who was dressing, she opened the door and left. Dalen watched Lucia leave with a cold gaze as he buttoned his shirt. On the way back to her room, Lucia saw John and said, "Help me get the breakfast. I'm not going to go down and eat." "All right." John nodded. Lucia returned to her room. She didn't want to get close to Dalen. It was too dangerous. Moreover, she was severely deprived of sleep. Now that she was pregnant, she needed even more sleep than usual to feel rested. John carried her breakfast to the main hall and saw Dalen coming down from upstairs. John's footsteps paused as he lowered his head. Dalen glanced at the plate of breakfast and headed towards the dining room without saying anything. John breathed a sigh of relief and immediately brought Lucia her breakfast. Across town, Victoria, who had finished her breakfast, was walking around the garden, breathing in the fresh air. Catherine walked up to her in a hurry. "Catherine, what's wrong?" Victoria asked. "Do you know why Dalen wanted you to leave? I found out that Lucia is back in the mansion." Victoria's expression changed immediately. "Why would she go back? This must be part of her trick." Victoria's eyes were filled with anger. Catherine was also very angry. Dalen was fooled. "She's too shameless." Victoria clenched her fingers tightly, trembling from the exertion. "How many women coveted marrying Dalen? Lucia is not that stupid," Catherine said. Victoria looked into the distance and said, "It's all right. We'll let her be happy for 2 days first. Then we'll make our move." In the mansion, Lucia was sleeping soundly, so much that her ringing cell phone didn't wake her. It wasn't until John knocked on the door that she finally got up. She stretched under the blanket. Her little face was flushed. John pushed the door open and walked in. He said, "Madame, it's time to eat." "Oh, I'll get up." Lucia thought of something and asked again, "Did Dalen go to work?" "Yes, he left this morning," John confirmed. "Got it." Lucia didn't want to face Dalen, but how long could she avoid him for? What should she do? Lucia's head hurt, and her chest hurt even more. Before leaving the room, Lucia checked her cell phone. She was stunned by the many missed calls. They were all from Cole. Lucia called back. "What's wrong?" Lucia felt that she had nothing to lose now. "Let me tell you some good news," Cole said excitedly. "I don't know if there's any good news for me anymore." Lucia said, feeling depressed.
The Patrick family has given up on purchasing our company.
Cole couldn't hide his excitement. Lucia was surprised, but it wasn't hard to understand. After all, she had already returned to the mansion. What reason did Dalen have to buy her company now?
Are you happy?
Cole waited for a long time, but he didn't hear Lucia's voice. He asked,
Or are you so happy that you can't speak anymore?
I'm so happy I can't even speak, Lucia lied.
Yay! I told you that Dalen would give up on buying the company. His only goal was to get you back. Lucia, I don't know what you are being stubborn about. You and Dalen are husband and wife. No matter how unhappy you are, this can't be changed,
Cole said reasonably. I know, Lucia sighed. Nothing bad happened when you went back last night, right? Cole asked. No, it's pretty good, Lucia said. Where's Victoria? Not here. She's not there anymore? Dalen is too cool. Cole was happy for Lucia because he didn't know the whole story. Lucia went out for a walk after lunch. She found herself in front of the rose garden. Although the roses were still bright and alive, they were not as tender and alluring as before. They looked sickly, as if they could die at any moment. Lucia walked on for a distance, and a swing was there, hanging alone and abandoned. Looking at it, she couldn't help but feel sad. Lucia walked over and sat down on the swing. She grabbed the iron chains, rested her head on her arm, and she swayed gently. In the afternoon, Lucia returned to her room and sat in the living room watching TV. She fell asleep with her head tilted to the side. When Dalen walked into the room, Lucia was still asleep. Lucia seemed to feel the uneasiness in the air while sleeping. She opened her eyes slightly, and when she saw the person standing in front of her, she jumped in fright. She wanted to sit up, but she was still stiff from sleeping for so long on the sofa. Lucia struggled to sit up, her voice soft. You're back. I heard you slept all day, Dalen asked. Lucia raised her gaze and reminded him. I barely slept last night. Are you unhappy? Dalen's expression turned dark. I don't dare to be unhappy. Lucia stood up to wash her face. When the cold water hit her face, her brain cleared up. 1 or 2 days would be fine, but if it was like this every day, Dalen would definitely suspect that something wasn't right. When Lucia was done washing her face, Dalen was no longer in the room, so she just sat on the sofa to watch TV. After just a few minutes, she had fallen completely asleep. She slept until dinner. At dinner, she and Dalen were the only 2 people at the table. The atmosphere was silent. Dalen didn't mention anything about last night or the company, as if nothing had happened. Lucia also did not want to mention it. She thought about thanking him, but what was there to thank? This whole mess was originally caused by Dalen. As Lucia ate, she yawned. Her eyes watered, making her look innocent and cute. Lucia noticed Dalen's gaze the moment she finished yawning. It was so sharp that it seemed as if it could pierce through her body. Lucia smiled uncomfortably. I didn't sleep well last night. Are you doing this on purpose for me to see? Dalen teased. Huh? Lucia didn't understand for a moment. Then she realized what he meant and quickly replied, Of course not. How could I fake a yawn? I don't have that kind of ability. Dalen withdrew his sharp gaze and said calmly, I can't wait for tonight. Make sure you eat lots of food. Lucia lowered her voice and said, My body still hurts, and I'm not very hungry. Maybe you should find someone else tonight. She didn't care anymore. Dalen's expression immediately turned cold. Lucia continued, Well, I'm being very generous, am I not? You can be with Victoria. Isn't that who you like? Don't you see? I'm giving you permission. I don't feel like anything anymore. Dalen's expression was terrifying, and his eyes were filled with a whirlpool of hostility. Dalen ordered the servants, "Since she isn't hungry, then take away her plate." Lucia saw Edward walking over and quickly said, "What are you doing? When did I say I didn't want to eat anymore?" "You're talking too much," Dalen said curtly. "Fine, I'll stop talking." Lucia put on an incomparably pitiful expression as she hugged the plate in front of her with both hands. Dalen raised his eyes and said coldly, "What are you doing?" Edward immediately went up and took the plate out of her hands. Lucia was angered. Looking at Dalen, the anger in her heart flared. "Dalen, why are you bullying me like this when you're the one who forced me to come back?" Dalen pretended not to hear her. Lucia wanted to slap Dalen's face. "Fine, just ignore me." Lucia stood up and prepared to leave the dining room. Dalen pulled her back into the seat forcefully and said with a cold look in his eyes, "Sit here." Lucia fell into her seat, afraid to stand up again. If she provoked Dalen, he might get even more violent. Lucia was forced to sit there and watch Dalen finish his dinner. She was very stubborn. From beginning to end, she didn't utter a word. Finally, Dalen finished his food and ordered, "Take it away." Then he left the dining room. Hearing the sound of his footsteps leaving, Lucia looked extremely displeased. Then she angrily went back to her room. Lucia was alone in her room with the TV on. However, she was actually really hungry. Lucia glanced at the door. No sound could be heard outside in the hall. Dalen hadn't sent anyone to bring Lucia a message calling her to his room. She was glad, because she didn't have the energy to deal with Dalen. Suddenly, her phone rang, and Lucia was stunned. She picked it up and looked at it. She answered, "Hello?"
"Young madame, it's me. Are you awake?"
John's voice whispered. "Yes, what's wrong?" Lucia answered.
"I have something for you to eat. Open the door a little. I'll secretly bring it over to you."
"Really? That's great. All right, I'll go and open the door now." Lucia immediately opened the door a crack. She had to be quiet. If she was caught, she would seriously have nothing to eat. She opened the door a crack and saw John, who was quietly walking over while carrying some food. Lucia quickly opened the door wider to let John in before closing the door. "I remember that you used to eat these a lot when you were here before," John said. Lucia smiled. "This looks delicious." She sat down at the table and said, "I'd better eat all this as soon as possible. If Dalen comes, I won't be able to eat anymore." "I'll keep watch for you at the door," John volunteered. After he left and closed the door, he was happy to know that his young mistress was eating contentedly. Just as John was feeling proud of himself, the door to the master bedroom opened. Dalen's dark, tall figure appeared. John, who was standing still, quickly raised his voice. "Mr. Patrick!" Lucia heard John's warning outside her door. She wouldn't be able to bear having all this food taken away from her. But what should she do? Lucia spun around frantically with the plate in her hand. Then she looked at the window. She hurriedly put the plate on the windowsill behind the curtain, and then she pulled the curtain closed to cover it. She wiped her mouth with the back of her hand. Dalen came in the moment she finished doing all this. Lucia held her hands out in front of her, trying to look innocent. She straightened her body and looked at Dalen as he walked in. She asked with a smile, "Why are you here?" Dalen asked coldly, "What? I can't come in?" Lucia stuttered. I mean, why aren't you asleep yet? I was just about to go to bed. In a few minutes, I might even be asleep." Lucia tried to keep a smile on her face. She didn't want him to see through her guilt. Dalen walked towards Lucia without any change in his expression. Lucia could only endure and deal with it. "What are you doing?" Dalen looked at her suspiciously. "Me? I'm not doing anything. Didn't I say it already? I was just about to go to bed. Lucia continued to smile as if she hadn't done anything. Did you eat something? Dalen asked. Lucia's heart almost jumped as she laughed. Of course not. I was not allowed to eat dinner. Dalen stared at Lucia's face, which was flushed from nervousness. Then why do I smell food? Food? There's no food. Lucia intentionally sniffed the air and said seriously to Dalen, I don't smell anything. Is there something wrong with your nose? Dalen looked at her with dark and calm eyes. He had already seen through everything. As soon as he entered the room, he could smell the scent of food drifting in the air. No matter how hard Lucia tried to hide the panic on her face, her emotions couldn't escape his sharp gaze. I have a way to find out if you're stealing food, Dalen said threateningly. What method? Lucia asked nervously. This method. Dalen reached out his hand to grab Lucia's jaw. Then he kissed her deeply. Lucia's eyes widened in shock, and she tried to resist, but she couldn't resist Dalen's forceful strength. You definitely eat food. Dalen's lips were a whisper away from her mouth. His voice was low. Lucia's heartbeat quickened. She tried to step back from Dalen, but he refused to let her go. He continued kissing her until Lucia thought she might pass out from oxygen. Finally, Dalen let her go. Did you miss me? Dalen teased. Although he was asking a question, he was very confident. Lucia didn't know what to say. Other than gasping for air, she was completely speechless. How could she have known that Dalen would use such a method to check if she had eaten food? If she had known earlier, she might as well have admitted it out loud. He nearly kissed her to death. If you miss something, you can continue. Then you are acting against my orders. Dalen was not angry. Dalen stared at Lucia's face with his black eyes. She was clean and fair, beautiful and tender, and her eyes were filled with emotion, making her face even more vivid and adorable. He had never stared at Victoria for so long before. When he came back to his senses, he realized that he had been lost in thought for a while. Tell me, what have I forgotten? I'm listening. You can tell me now. Dalen's expression was cold, and his eyes were deep. What? Lucia was stunned by Dalen's words. Do you really want to hear it? You've never believed anything I said before. Whether I want to listen or not is different from whether I believe you, Dalen said objectively. Lucia felt helpless, so she said the first thing she thought of. Once you used a fake account to message me online. You added me without my knowledge. I know, Dalen said. You know? Lucia was surprised. Have you recovered some of your memories? No, but I still have the phone that has all those messages. Dalen's face was calm. Lucia thought that when the car fell off the cliff, Dalen's phone must have been destroyed. She never expected he would still have those messages. Then you know what the conversation above was about, right? Lucia asked. Yes. When Dalen had seen the chat log, it was filled with arrogance and disrespect towards Lucia, which made him wonder what kind of a person he was. That night, he had looked at the chat logs for a long time. There's also this. Lucia held up her left hand. The ring on her finger was shining beautifully. Lucia held up her hand and showed Dalen the finger. Ever since I ran away, I haven't been able to take off the ring. Dalen grabbed her hand and tried to remove the ring. He couldn't take it off. It hurts, Lucia called out softly. Dalen glanced at her. He didn't even use that much strength. However, Lucia's fingers were delicate. There must be a reason why he had done this. How many times have you run away? Dalen asked. 3 times. Or 4. I don't remember. I didn't want to be married to you, but you have forced me to come back every time, Lucia complained. Dalen's expression was dark and cold. He stared at Lucia's face. So Lucia was claiming that it was him who forced her to get married? That she didn't trick him? This was not convincing, but a few weeks ago he had discovered that there was a tracking device in the ring. Wherever Lucia was, his phone would be able to track her down. From the looks of it, Lucia did not know about the tracking device. Dalen, what I said is all true. I wouldn't possibly do this to myself, would I? Lucia said, afraid that Dalen wouldn't believe her. Dalen let go of her hand. From now on, you will stay by my side. No matter what you do, you must get my permission. Do you hear me? Lucia's small mouth moved pitifully. Why? Didn't you say that once I recover my memories, I will understand everything? Your purpose is to restore my memory. After Dalen finished, he turned around to leave. Lucia watched him. When he opened the door, she blurted out, Dalen, did you force me to come back because of your investigation? Forced? I only helped you do what was right. With that, he left. Lucia stood there in a daze. What should she do? Should she help Dalen regain his memories? That would be of great benefit to her. If Dalen recovered his memory, then she wouldn't have to worry so much about the baby. She slept soundly the whole night, and Dalen didn't ask her to go to his room. She woke up with a full night's sleep in the morning. At the breakfast table, Lucia said, Dalen, I want to go to the company. I can go to the company, right? I'll be back after work. Dalen didn't say anything, so Lucia knew that he had agreed. When they walked out of the dining room, Lucia walked up to Dalen. Dalen, can I ask you for a favor? Dalen shifted his eyes, and his sharp gaze fell on her face. I promise you that I will stay in the mansion, but I hope that you can trust me. For example, if something happens and I tell you about it, you have to believe me, Lucia said seriously. She was tired of misunderstandings. What do you think will happen? Dalen asked. Well, in the area of men, Lucia answered uncomfortably. Were you like this before? Huh? Lucia was slightly stunned. Because of my unconditional trust in you before. That's why you would hang out with other men. Dalen, I didn't. Dalen interrupted her with a cold expression. Your only use right now is to recover my memories. Otherwise, I will make sure that you live a life worse than death. With that, Dalen walked past her and left. Dalen always had a strong reaction to Lucia's engagements with the opposite sex, but the amnesia made it even worse. That morning, Lucia returned to the company for work. From the moment she walked in, she could feel that the atmosphere was different. During the days of the acquisition, the company felt dead, but now it was back to normal. Lucia went to Tracy's office first. She was about to push the door open, but thinking about what she had seen the other day, she raised her hand and knocked on the door. She heard Tracy call out from inside. Come in. Lucia pushed the door open and entered. Tracy, who was staring at her work at the desk, did not raise her head and instead asked, What is it? Are you busy? Lucia asked. Tracy was taken aback. She raised her head and asked, Did you knock on my door just now? Yeah, Lucia said. Tracy thought of something and smiled. You know, you don't need to knock on the door. Why not? Lucia was a bit confused. I always know that it's you when you just walk in, Tracy explained. Then she stood up and walked around the desk. Are you here to ask about the matter of the Patrick family giving up on buying the company? I was going to call you, but Cole is such a good friend of yours, and I thought it would be better if he called you. Yes, he told me. I can't believe they even considered buying us out, Lucia said snappily. Dalen controls more than just the Patrick family's business. Their portfolio includes many other businesses. It's a good thing that he was just playing around with you. Tracy smiled. I heard you went back to the mansion. Lucia looked at Tracy in confusion. Do you want to thank me? Tracy continued. Thank you? Lucia was shocked. Wasn't it my idea? You seduced him and nothing happened. Am I right? Tracy smiled complacently. Lucia didn't think so. However, she wasn't sure after thinking about what Dalen did to her after she returned. So, in the end, she just gave a gentle nod and left Tracy's office. When Cole saw Lucia, he knew that something was wrong and asked her, "Why do you look so sad?" "I look sad?" Lucia asked. "Yeah, you have a big frown on your face," Cole replied. "Well, you're wrong. The company is fine now, so I'm very happy." Lucia threw her bag onto the sofa and sat down. "Cole, what do we have for lunch?" Cole was baffled. "You don't care about the company?" Lucia rolled her eyes. "Of course I care. I was just at Tracy's office talking about it. Now I'm done talking about it, and I'm hungry." Lucia leaned against the sofa with her hand on her beautiful chin. Cole looked at Lucia's beautiful profile and felt that something was wrong with her. She wasn't interested in anything but food. It didn't matter if the company was bought or whether she went back to the mansion or not, and it didn't even matter if Victoria was in the mansion. What was going on? Had she already given up on Dalen? On the other side of town, Catherine was also very concerned about Victoria. She even accompanied Linda to church to pray. On one hand, she wanted to pray for Victoria to marry Dalen. On the other hand, she wanted to try and coax Linda more. After being in the Patrick family for so many years, Catherine knew how to go after what she wanted. When they arrived back at the house, Catherine instructed Abigail, Linda's personal maid, to arrange the groceries they brought back. Linda, who had already sat down, said, "You have accompanied me for more than half a day. Quickly sit down and rest." After arranging the items, Catherine walked over. "I'm not tired. I'm just worried that you're tired." Linda tisked. "You're the one who's so busy after all, so you're the one who should be tired." Victoria originally wanted to come over too, but she wasn't feeling well, so I came over for her. "What happened to Victoria?" Linda asked with concern. Catherine sighed. "She's been fine for a while and hasn't taken any medicine for a long time. But after being home these past 2 days, she's gotten sick again, and I don't even know how to treat her. She's almost like my own child, and I'm worried about her," Catherine said with despair. "When did she come back?" Linda asked. "Just 2 days ago," Catherine said with a hint of awkwardness. "Actually, isn't that when Lucia went back to the mansion? She's always been there. It's not good at all." With that, she noticed that Linda's expression remained calm, so she continued. "I think that's normal. Anyway, as long as Dalen's happy, it's fine." Linda was silent for a while before she suddenly said, "We're talking so much, let's drink some tea." "All right." Catherine drank dejectedly from the teacup in front of her and did not continue. Linda wasn't stupid, and Catherine's talking too much was just too deliberate. After Catherine left, Linda said to Abigail, "Catherine said all of that very deliberately." Abigail responded, "Then it's no wonder. After all, she is just worried for Victoria. Parents would always think about their own children. It's just like the old mistress." Linda was angered when she thought about it. She put down the cup in her hand and said, "Victoria is really useless. Even now she can't get Dalen to fall for her. No matter how skilled she is, it might never be enough to change the feelings Dalen has for Lucia, right?" Abigail reasoned. "Nonsense. Men are always changing feelings and finding new partners." Linda was furious. Abigail was a little worried, but she looked at the ground and did not say anything. Linda continued, "I thought that Lucia leaving made things really hopeful for Victoria, but in the end she still failed. If I don't intervene, then she'll be at a loss for what to do." Linda hated the fact that Victoria had failed. Isn't this a good thing, though? This means that Victoria won't be as headstrong and stubborn as Lucia, and she will be a better wife for Dalen, Abigail said. Linda's expression turned slightly better as she thought about Abigail's wise words. Catherine returned home and went to find Victoria, who was pruning flowers on the balcony of her room. I say, how are you still in the mood to do all this? Catherine frowned upon entering. Catherine, what's wrong? Victoria put down the scissors in her hand. You have been with Linda all day. Are there any updates? Catherine sighed. Today I told Linda that you have come back and that it would not be good for you to stay in the mansion. I tried to be sneaky, but I think she must have understood what I was doing. So if Linda asks you something, be careful about how you respond. Thank you, Catherine, for always worrying about me. I know, and I'll be careful, Victoria responded. Anyway, with so many of us combined, we can handle Lucia. Catherine thought about what happened in the hospital the other day and felt a bitter taste in her mouth. She turned around and left the room. Victoria stood there, lost in thought as she stared at the empty doorway. After a while, she said, I feel that Linda definitely thinks that I am very useless. Then she turned around and looked at Jerica. Do you think so as well? That's not it. Miss, you have your weaknesses, but I don't think it's useless for you to act well and be meek, Jerica answered. Victoria knew what Jerica was thinking, but she didn't care. Her eyes were calculating. So what if I'm weak? It's enough as long as someone is strong in my place. Miss, you mean Linda? Jerica asked. When Lucia returned to the mansion, Linda was more anxious than I was. Since she's already like this, I'm sure she'll take the initiative to do something about it, Victoria said. Miss, you are so clever, Jerica exclaimed. In the office, Lucia was on the computer researching pregnancy symptoms. She checked to see why she always felt flushed and found that pregnant women often suffer from relatively high temperatures. She had worn a short sleeve and a thin coat, but she was still sweating. Would others be able to tell that something was amiss? Lucia looked at Cole silently. Cole was also wearing a thin coat with a long sleeve. Seeing Cole walk over, Lucia immediately closed the webpage. There were documents on the table, so she took one out and looked at it. What did you do? Cole asked. Huh? Lucia raised her head and looked at Cole with a confused expression. There's sweat on your forehead. Cole pointed to the sweat dripping down Lucia's cheeks. Is that so? Lucia wanted to say that Cole had seen wrongly, but when she wiped her hand, it was undoubtedly covered in sweat. Did you just do some exercise or something? Cole asked. Lucia shrugged. Would it be strange if I took off my coat? I only have a short sleeve underneath. Cole was shocked. You're still hot even with your short sleeves? I know that the weather has indeed been warmer recently, but it's still not that hot. Cole walked out of the office as he spoke. Lucia quickly took off her coat, and she suddenly felt her head turn cold. She wiped her forehead with a tissue. When Cole returned to Lucia's office, he saw that Lucia had indeed taken off her coat. He couldn't help but whistle, making Lucia blush. Your arms are looking good, Cole teased. Go tease Spencer, Lucia complained. You're one to talk, Cole said smugly. Lucia returned to the mansion after work. When she arrived outside, she saw another car parked in front, a car she knew. When she walked into the hall, she saw Linda sitting inside. It seemed like Dalen still hadn't returned. Lucia walked slowly towards the sofa. She greeted, Hello, Mom. Perhaps this form of address could be considered strong to Linda, but Lucia was still Dalen's wife, so she persisted. Mom, when did you arrive? I'll ask the kitchen help to prepare some food. You must have dinner here. Lucia said, as if she couldn't see the unhappiness in Linda's eyes. This is my son's mansion. I don't need to explain anything when I come here, Linda said. Of course, you're right. Lucia tried not to react to Linda's coldness. Are you going to stay standing while you talk to me? Linda looked up at Lucia with judgment in her eyes. Lucia paused before sitting down on the sofa. Linda looked at Lucia with an indifferent expression. Didn't I hear that you left the mansion earlier? Why are you back? Is this your trick? You want to play with Dalen's heart? Lucia could not accept these accusations. No, of course not. So you're saying that Dalen forced you to come back? Linda asked. Yes. Lucia nodded. The displeasure on Linda's face was obvious. She didn't expect Lucia to actually reply in such a manner. Lucia continued. I hope you won't be angry. After all, I'm still Dalen's wife. It was only a matter of time before I came back. Are you suggesting that I don't have the power to control you right now? Anger was written all over Linda's face. Mom, Lucia began. Don't call me that. I thought you didn't have the guts and wouldn't come back, but you did. You and Dalen aren't legally wed to each other. That's just a piece of paper. It only takes one word and it's all gone. After she finished speaking, Linda stood up angrily and walked away. Lucia stayed seated on the sofa without a word. She understood that Linda would be disdainful of any show of strength, and that it would only make her feel more disgusted. Lucia was really tired of dealing with Linda. However, she couldn't let herself feel tired. For the sake of the child in her womb, she also had to constantly relax. John, who was standing not too far away, had seen everything. He noticed Lucia leaning against the sofa with a painful smile on her face. He ran over to say something, trying to distract Lucia from the distressful interaction. Miss Lucia, do you want to eat something? Mr. Patrick hasn't returned yet. I want to eat pasta. Is that okay? Lucia asked. Of course you can, John hurriedly replied. And can you put more meat in it? Lucia asked. All right, I'll go instruct them right away, John said. At the Patrick family office, Spencer knocked on the door with a document and entered Dalen's office. Mr. Patrick, these are the documents you requested. The people who attacked us weren't very professional. They are hitmen, but they were paid off. There were 7 people who died in the incident. 6 of them had no family, and the other had a wife who hadn't been in touch with him for a long time, so she didn't know anything. But she did say that her husband loved to hang out in a bar in the city. He seemed to have a crew that was pretty tight, Spencer said. Dalen looked at the information in his hand and remained silent. As long as they are in the city, these people will definitely not be able to escape, Spencer said. How long have they been here, and who have they been in contact with? Dalen's expression was cold. Mr. Patrick, if you want to know about this, I am afraid it's better if you investigate yourself, Spencer said hesitantly. Dalen looked at Spencer with a sharp gaze, and Spencer just looked at the floor and didn't say anything. Dalen stood up with a cold face and passed the document to Spencer. Destroy this. Yes, sir. Dalen left the office and got into his car. He opened his phone and saw on his tracking app that Lucia was in the mansion. After returning to the mansion, Dalen took off his jacket and Edward took it. His voice was low and dignified as he said, Call her down. John immediately said, Miss Lucia has already eaten. Dalen looked coldly at John. John lowered his head, not daring to breathe. Who allowed that? Dalen asked. She was so hungry, so I instructed the kitchen to cook pasta for her to eat. In the past, you have always permitted it. When John saw Dalen's gaze, he didn't dare to continue talking. Dalen's face was frighteningly cold. Suddenly, Lucia's voice came from the dining room. Ah, it's time to eat? She had heard the conversation, and she didn't want John to get in trouble for her sake. Dalen turned around and looked at her with a cold expression. "Can we eat now?" Lucia asked with innocent eyes. Then she looked at John. "Help me get the table ready." "Yes, Mom." John knew Lucia was helping him out, so he left immediately. Lucia then said to John, "Why are you being so mean to him? He did nothing wrong." As she spoke, she sat down in her seat. Dalen also sat down, but he was still staring at Lucia. "Didn't you already eat?" Anymore. Lucia saw that Dalen didn't respond, so she didn't move and just stared at him. His face was strangely tense. I'm okay. Let go of me." When Lucia moved, she found that the arm around her waist was still tightly holding her. "Dalen, let go!" Lucia tugged at his arm. Only then did Dalen let her go. After both of them stood up, Dalen's gaze was still on her face. However, Lucia didn't want to stay there any longer, so she hurried back to her room. She turned and walked up the stairs, and Dalen never said anything to her. She couldn't help but turn her head, and she immediately locked onto Dalen's black eyes that caused her heart and soul to tremble. When she got back to her room, Lucia began to pace around due to her nervousness. She thought back to Dalen's expression just now. His face had been hard and cold, and he was staring straight at her. Had she provoked him again? She also thought about how fortunate it was that she landed on Dalen just now. Otherwise, her baby could have been injured. Lucia hadn't told Dalen anything about Linda coming over. Her current plan was to be completely obedient to Dalen and not provoke him. It would be tiring to be so careful, but she had no other choice. That night in the master bedroom, Dalen was sleeping, and the dream he was experiencing was very deep. His mind kept digging, just wanting to discover more. There was a laughing girl, but she had her back turned toward him. He ran after her and took her hand, but when he tried to grab her hand, she was suddenly much further in the distance. Finally, he grasped the small hand and clenched it tightly. The figure spun around. When Dalen saw her face, he suddenly opened his eyes and woke up. Dalen sat up in bed and saw that his room was still dark. Only his heavy breathing could be heard in the silent air. Inside the room next door, Lucia was sleeping soundly when a black shadow silently appeared beside the bed. Lucia was completely unaware of the danger. It was Dalen. Dalen stared at Lucia with a sharp and profound gaze. He felt that it was right for her to return to the mansion. Perhaps it wouldn't be long before he could remember everything. It had been several days since Lucia had returned to the mansion. Everything was very calm. Although getting along with Dalen could be difficult at times, at least there weren't many conflicts. Lucia got to the point where she felt that it would be okay to continue like this. But the baby was coming. So right now, her only hope was for Dalen to recover his memories. If he didn't recover, how would she hide her growing belly? Every night, just in case, Lucia let a few drops of her own blood on a period pad. She would bite her fingers until they bled, and it was really painful. She had to hide her wounds, though, so Dalen wouldn't notice anything amiss. However, one night, Lucia forgot that her index finger was still injured. So when she and Dalen were having dinner and she held a spoon, a burst of pain came over her. "Ah!" Lucia called out softly. When she noticed Dalen's gaze sweeping over her, she immediately pretended that nothing had happened and laughed. "The spoon seems a bit hot." After saying that, she pursed her lips and blew onto the handle of the spoon. Then she picked up the spoon and continued to drink the soup. It didn't hurt now because she changed the way she held the spoon. "It's okay now," Lucia said it to Dalen. But even if Dalen had lost his memories, he was still smart and sharp. He grabbed Lucia's wrist. "Ah!" Lucia was shocked. When Dalen saw the wound on Lucia's finger, his expression changed. "Oh, about this. I accidentally cut myself." Lucia tried to withdraw her hand, but Dalen was too strong. "How?" Dalen's expression did not become any better. On the contrary, it turned even darker. "I would like to know, how did you do this to yourself?" "This..." Lucia's mind was racing. "Remember how I used to like stealing things?" She didn't know what direction this excuse was going, even as she was speaking it. She continued, "Every day I go to and from work, I pass by all sorts of supermarkets and shops, and I always see the phone that the clerk had on his desk, and I want to steal one for myself. But I can't steal. I know in my heart that stealing things is not good. So every time I try to steal, I bite one of my fingers and remind myself to control my intrusive thoughts. Now that all 4 of my fingers are bitten, it means I've had 4 attempts at stealing." Lucia's habit of stealing things was familiar to Dalen. Even if he did not completely remember it, Linda had said that it was Lucia's love of stealing that had led to their ruined marriage. Lucia felt that her entire hand was numb. She softly reminded Dalen, "Dalen, you're hurting my wrist." Dalen glanced at her coldly and let go. Lucia rubbed her wrist to ease the pain. Just as she was about to eat, Dalen said with a blank expression, "Have you been caught stealing things before?" "Yes, but you solved it," Lucia said. "And even if others see that you stole something, no one would dare to make things difficult for you because they know we're together. Is that true?" Dalen asked. Yes, I guess so." Lucia was embarrassed to say that she used to steal without restraint. Even Dalen, who had lost his memory, would not believe that she could be so disorderly. "So you don't have to resist. Just take whatever you want," Dalen continued. Lucia acted as if she didn't understand and asked, "You mean, you want me to steal it? No need. I'll be embarrassed if I act like this." "This is not for you, but for me to regain my memories," Dalen said. Lucia was speechless. Dalen always surprised her. But other than stealing, she would cooperate, because she hoped that it would help Dalen quickly recover his memories. Lucia took her cell phone out of her pocket and typed a message. Question. "Dalen, I sent you a message. Take a look." Dalen took out his phone and opened it. Lucia moved her head closer to see his screen, but when Dalen looked at her coldly, Lucia retracted her head. Dalen opened the message and saw her message. "Master." Dalen pursed his lips and put the phone back into his pocket expressionlessly. "Dalen, didn't you reply to me?" Lucia asked. "Don't you want to eat?" Dalen shot back. "I'll eat." Lucia buried her face in the bowl and ate. The next day, Lucia was at work sitting on the couch in her office with a file in one hand and a pen in the other. Suddenly, she thought of something and put her work aside. Lucia took out her phone and sent a message to Dalen. "Lucia, Master, call me." She waited for a long time, but there was no response. She typed again. Master, call me." But Dalen was still quiet. Lucia, on the other hand, was not discouraged. "Lucia, Master, why don't you reply to me?" At the end, there was even a tearful emoji. Dalen's face turned dark as he looked at the messages that kept popping up on his phone's screen. Lucia looked at the phone and thought to herself, did he see the message or not? Just as she was thinking about it, a message appeared. "Master, what is it?" Lucia was stunned for a moment before feeling some happiness. Had Dalen been moved by her perseverance? She wondered what Dalen was thinking. Her goal was to make Dalen feel familiar with her. She had tried to make Dalen recover his memories, but to no avail. After she gave up, Dalen told her to stay by his side until he regained his memories. Thus, Lucia was willing to give it a shot. No matter if it was her sincerity or her helplessness, she would do her best. Lucia thought of all the things that had happened in the past, and typed out 3 words, adding countless ellipses. "Lucia, I missed you." Dalen looked at the 3 words. His heart was beating unusually fast, and his breathing was a little rough. Most importantly, he was feeling hot. It was as if he was being seduced. After sending the message, Lucia got no reply. Was Dalen completely ignoring her? Lucia could guess Dalen's reaction, so she wasn't too disappointed. In the afternoon, Lucia went back to her office after going to the washroom. She saw Cole playing with his cell phone and told him, "I'm going to take a nap." "Why do you have to nap every day?" Cole stood up. "Let's go shopping. We haven't been shopping in a long time." "We can go after my nap," Lucia said. "It will become dark by the time you wake up," Cole argued. Lucia had been sleeping for quite a few hours at a time and would not wake up until long after work was over. "Let's go on Sunday." Lucia was determined not to go shopping with Cole right then, so she went into the lounge and closed the door. Cole frowned. In the past, he could always convince Lucia to go shopping with him. But now Lucia was acting like she had no desire at all. Cole really wasn't used to it. Lucia entered the lounge and took a shower in the bathroom. After showering, she dried her hair and walked out of the bathroom feeling refreshed. However, there was another person in the room. "Ayo, you scared me to death." Lucia took a big step back and held her chest. Dalen, who had just entered a few seconds ago, looked over at her. Lucia, who had just finished her shower, was wearing a thin nightgown. Since she was going to take a nap, she didn't intend to wear any other clothes. Dalen stared, and he couldn't help but narrow his eyes. Lucia noticed Dalen's dangerous gaze and quickly crossed herself with her hands. After carefully observing her surroundings, she asked, "Why are you here?" "Didn't you say you missed me?" Dalen asked. Lucia staggered a little as she walked towards the bed. She looked at Dalen's calm expression and unfathomable eyes. But you didn't answer me." "That's why I'm here," Dalen explained. Lucia immediately waved her hand and forced a smile on her face. "You're too polite. There's no need to take it too seriously. I'll see you later." "Since you said you missed me, then of course I have to show my gratitude," Dalen teased. When Lucia saw Dalen approaching her, she quickly ran to the other side of the bed and held out her 2 hands to stop him. Lucia said anxiously, "Wait a moment. My period is still here." "I'll know if you're lying when I see it." Dalen arrived in front of Lucia, his tall figure enveloping her. Don't!" But Dalen easily tossed Lucia onto the bed. Lucia looked up with fear in her eyes. Her 2 hands rested on Dalen's firm and strong chest. I really am on my period. It's not like you don't know." Lucia was sweating profusely, feeling like the bath she had just taken was a waste. "How many days has it been?" Dalen asked. 5, 6, 4 days. Ah! Before Lucia could finish her sentence, Dalen pressed closer to her. Dalen's breathing became heavier. Lucia continued pleading with him. "Dalen, don't act recklessly. My period usually lasts for over a week." Seeing the change in Dalen's expression, Lucia was so scared that her voice started to tremble. "Can't you wait for 2 days?" Dalen kept staring at Lucia, and his gaze didn't shift away. He seemed to be struggling with his thoughts. Upon seeing this, Lucia moved her hand that was resting on Dalen's chest. She lifted up her upper body and pressed her lips to Dalen's. The soft touch made Dalen's breath sink. After staying still for a while, Lucia slowly pulled away and carefully looked at Dalen's expression. "Are you trying to stop me? Or are you trying to light the fire in me?" Dalen's voice was rough and hoarse. "I'm trying to stop you." Lucia spoke the truth as she looked at Dalen. "Actually, if you want to recover your memories, this might be the best way, right?" "When I wanted you, I wasn't trying to recover my memories," Dalen explained. "What?" Lucia was confused. I just want to be with you, Dalen whispered. Lucia's small mouth trembled, and she was speechless. If I remember correctly, I needed to be with you every day before I lost my memory. Dalen looked at her, revealing the truth to her. Lucia was momentarily at a loss as to how to respond. But it's really inconvenient for me right now. Lucia still tried to delay the conversation for a while. Seeing that Dalen was not saying anything, Lucia couldn't help but shrink her body back, until she emerged from under Dalen's shadow. Lucia crawled under the quilt, covering herself tightly. Dalen was motionless, as if he was a wild beast that could erupt with energy at any time. Lucia said softly, I've been working all morning. I'm a little tired. Do you want to go out for a while? Dalen got off of the bed and left. Lucia thought that he was going to leave the lounge, but instead he went into the bathroom. Dalen, what are you doing? Lucia wanted to get out of the bed, but she resisted. Was he using the toilet? Just as she was thinking this, Lucia heard the sound of water flowing in the bathroom. Lucia tensed up. What was he doing? Could he be bathing? Dalen was taking a bath here? Why? What did this mean? Lucia did not understand. This didn't seem like Dalen's style. Lucia slowly became lost in thought, thinking about all the nights when they had showered together. Suddenly, Lucia came back to reality. What was she thinking about? Why was she thinking this way? She was so frustrated that she hit her own forehead with the palm of her hand. At that moment, Dalen came out of the bathroom and saw her. Lucia saw him walk out. His sexy body, strong muscles, and long legs shocked her heart. Dalen, what are you doing? Lucia's two hands tightened their grip on the blanket. Taking an afternoon nap? Dalen didn't even look at her and directly went to bed. Lucia was quite shocked when she saw Dalen lie down on the other side. The cut on his face made it hard for her to tell his mood. Are you taking a nap here? She asked. Dalen turned. His eyes were so deep and unfathomable that it made her panic. Yes. Or do you want to do something? Dalen teased. No, I don't think so. Lucia quickly shook her head and pulled at the blanket again. Dalen had already put out the fire in his body after taking a cold shower, but when he saw Lucia's tender white hands and her timid look, the heat started to rush in again. He pulled her. Dalen, what are you doing? Lucia complained. Outside the room, Cole, who had just returned from the office, paused his footsteps. Why did he seem to hear something unusual in the lounge? Lucia should have already gone to bed by now, right? Cole approached the lounge worriedly. Then he heard Lucia's voice from inside. No, what are you doing? Hearing her panicked voice, Cole felt that something wasn't right. Who was the other person in her room? Was it Dalen? Cole didn't dare enter. He turned around and left the office. He tried to determine what he should do. What's wrong? Came a voice from the doorway. Cole was so shocked that he spun around. He calmed down when he saw that it was just Spencer. Wait, if you're here, does it mean that the person inside with Lucia is Dalen? Yes, Spencer answered. Cole sighed with relief. That scared me. I was wondering who it was, so I wanted to find someone to confirm it for me. Now that I see you, I can tell what's going on, Cole said. Thinking of something, he asked again, Have Dalen and Lucia made up? Mr. Patrick has not recovered his memories, so it's hard to say. However, the general direction seems to be positive, Spencer told Cole, because even if Dalen wasn't willing to admit it, some things had happened to him that couldn't be erased. Cole and Spencer stood not far away from the door to the lounge, feeling a little awkward. But after thinking about it, why did Cole feel awkward? This was his territory. The one who should leave was Spencer, right? So Cole stubbornly stayed in the room, and the two of them were extremely uncomfortable without finding any topics to talk about. Cole knew that Spencer was very bored, but could find nothing to say. Cole had always felt that he was a good talker, but he was no match for Spencer's silence. "Then how long will you be staying here?" Cole asked. Cole's face turned red before he said, "Until Mr. Patrick is done with his business here?" Cole instantly felt extremely embarrassed, wishing he could find a hole to hide in. Spencer, of course, clearly saw Cole's discomfort. He thought this was rather interesting and didn't say anything else. Cole, on the other hand, racked his brains to find a topic to talk about in order to ease the awkward situation. In the past, they had always contacted each other over the phone. The number of times they had actually met in person could be counted with one hand. "Then, after working for Mr. Patrick for so long, do you think—" Cole had just found a topic that he thought might work when he heard a scream coming from the office. Cole stood there in a daze. If the person screaming inside was Lucia, he would definitely have rushed in. However, the person who was screaming was Dalen. What was going on? Logically speaking, Lucia should be the one with more reason to scream, right? Cole looked at Spencer with a puzzled expression. Spencer frowned and didn't say anything. "Do you want to go in and take a look?" Cole asked him. Judging from the situation, Lucia must have done something terrible to Dalen. However, Spencer only said 4 words. "We'll wait and see." A second later, the lounge was completely silent. Inside, Dalen sat on the bed and looked at Lucia with a sinister and dark expression. Lucia was trembling as she sat on the edge of the bed. I didn't do it on purpose. Don't be angry. I really didn't do it on purpose." Lucia's face turned red and white. She was truly afraid that Dalen would tear her apart. "Then it was intentional?" Dalen's intimidating voice sounded like it came from hell. No, it wasn't intentional. I was so anxious just now, so—" Lucia could not continue her sentence anymore. When Dalen had pulled her hand, Lucia was scared out of her wits. She wanted to do something to stop him, so she kicked him in the groin. Dalen looked at Lucia's terrified expression. He was in an extremely terrible mood and very angry. The pain that came from his body made him want to tear her apart. But Dalen suppressed his anger and lay back down on the bed. Lucia's nerves tensed up, but she didn't expect Dalen to lie down. What did that mean? Was he going to sleep? "Dalen, Lucia began. "Shut up." Dalen's voice was filled with his ruthlessness. Lucia immediately shut her mouth and pursed her lips. She slipped out from under the covers and turned away from the bed. She wanted to leave this dangerous situation as soon as possible. "Who gave you the permission to go?" Dalen asked threateningly. Lucia froze. She slowly turned her head and met Dalen's eagle-like eyes. "It seems like you want to take a nap, so I'm giving you the bed." Before Lucia could finish her words, she gave up and obediently climbed back onto the bed. Only after seeing her lie down did Dalen retract his murderous gaze. The lounge was completely silent, filled with tension and unease. Lucia felt like she couldn't sleep at all, but she underestimated the powerful symptoms of her pregnancy. A minute later, her breathing turned soft and even. Dalen turned so he could see Lucia's sleeping face. She looked so tranquil. It was as if nothing had happened just now. Staring at her cute face, Dalen's inner restlessness and brutality gradually subsided. Actually, he didn't come here to sleep with her. Since receiving the 3 words that Lucia had sent him, he had been absent-minded and unable to focus. He wanted to know what Lucia actually thought of him, so he came to the company to ask her. Unfortunately, she had just finished her shower, and her seductive looks took over his nerves. It was as if every time he saw her, he wanted to touch her. When Lucia woke up, she was alone on the bed, and there was no sign of Dalen in the lounge. She looked around the room with sleepy eyes, but Dalen was no longer there. Only then did she completely relax. It was too dangerous to be with Dalen. Lucia was shocked when the door to the lounge was pushed open. Cole stuck his head in and smiled at her. I knew you were awake. I've ordered some snacks. Would you like to have some with us? Hey, don't slack off at work, Lucia said seriously. I understand, boss, but my job is done. Cole didn't even bother to refute her. Fine, that's good. I didn't misjudge your work sense ever, Lucia said. Cole was exasperated. Oh, how did you know I was awake? Lucia asked. Dalen just left, so I figured you would be up, Cole said, as if nothing was out of the ordinary. You mean Dalen just left? Lucia couldn't believe it. She turned her head to look at the time. Dalen had stayed in the room for 3 hours. She actually slept for that long? Puzzled, Lucia lifted the blanket and got off the bed. Seeing this, Cole immediately let out a strange, oh, sound. Lucia didn't understand, but she lowered her head to take a look. She saw that her pajamas were in a mess, and they were torn apart, revealing a large portion of her skin underneath. She shrank back into bed and hid under the covers. With a blush, she shooed Cole away. Get out of here. What's there to be embarrassed about? I know what the two of you were doing. Cole walked to the door but refused to leave. A gloomy smile appeared on Lucia's face. Then who will take the initiative between you and Spencer in the future? Lucia teased. Cole's expression immediately became unnatural as he shouted in an attempt to cover his embarrassment. Hey, get up quickly. Otherwise, I'll eat all of your snacks. With that, he turned and left. Later that night, Lucia was in the bathroom holding a pad in one hand and looking at her injured fingers. She didn't know what to do. How long could this method last? Other than this, what other way did she have to stop Dalen? Suddenly, the bathroom door opened without any warning. Lucia's hand trembled and the pad dropped to the ground. Dalen's tall figure stood in the bathroom doorway. His eagle-like eyes stared at the frightened Lucia. Then his gaze fell upon the pad. Lucia's heart trembled as she regained her senses. She quickly picked up the pad and threw it into the trash can. When she stood up to face Dalen, a stiff smile appeared on her face. Why are you here? This is my bathroom. Can't you knock on the door before you come in? She felt very polite when she said it. However, Dalen remained expressionless from start to finish. What are you doing? Dalen asked. Me? Nothing. I just wanted to try and figure out why the pad seemed a little uncomfortable. Lucia's brain was working quickly, and she tried not to look like she was lying. Dalen walked forward expressionlessly. The pressure grew even stronger. Lucia's legs felt weak, but she still managed to hold on. Dalen's dark, sharp eyes looked down at her. He said in a low, terrifying voice, I was thinking, the blood on your pad. It can't be from your fingers, right? Every nerve in Lucia's body instantly tensed up. Her entire mind buzzed and her face flushed, but she immediately retorted with a laugh. How is that possible? How could the blood on my finger be the blood on the pad? Don't say that. As she finished speaking, she acted as if she was very embarrassed and used her hands to hold her face. In fact, she was extremely terrified. Is Dalen a mind reader? How did he guess all this? Dalen stretched out his hand and used his strong fingers to hold Lucia's jaw. Lucia felt her face rise. She couldn't help but tense up, as if she was going to be torn apart by Dalen at any moment. Her breathing became rapid. You think you can play tricks on me? Dalen asked. With that, he let go of her and left the bathroom. Dalen's threatening words were like a sharp knife pressed down on Lucia's body, making her unable to catch her breath for a long time. Even though Lucia was not caught by Dalen just now, she was still as frightened as if Dalen was holding on to her. Lucia staggered back 2 steps and sat on the bathroom stool. She sighed deeply, yet helplessly. She was still thinking of other ways to deal with Dalen, but her mind was in a mess. She couldn't think of any other idea. Seriously, how did he break into the bathroom? Lucia was so angry. Thinking of something, she rushed out of the bathroom and ran to the door. She had locked the door before entering the bathroom, just in case, but it had obviously been opened by Dalen. She had forgotten that Dalen had every key in the house. That morning, the atmosphere at the breakfast table was rather depressing. Lucia shot Dalen with a cold expression from time to time, but he acted as if he didn't see her and just focused on eating his breakfast. After he finished eating, he left. Lucia breathed a huge sigh of relief. Her mouth was filled with food, making her face bulge. He's finally gone. Lucia was relieved when Dalen left the breakfast table. It's impossible to eat breakfast with him. It's just too uncomfortable, Lucia said while shaking her head. Then she noticed that there was something wrong with Edward and John's expressions. They seemed to be terrified. It was only then that Lucia felt the chilly presence behind her. Turning around, she nearly spit the food out of her mouth. Startled, she stood up and took a few steps back. Dalen was standing there, staring at her angrily. Why are you back? Did you not eat enough? Do you want to eat more? Lucia tried to curry favor with him. You want me to stay? Aren't you afraid of indigestion? Dalen shot back. Lucia tensed up a little, so she hurriedly explained. How could that be? You must have heard wrong. I am so happy to be eating with you. She wanted to cry, but she held it in. Dalen didn't say a word. With a cold expression, he gave her a threatening glance, turned around, and left. Even after the heavy footsteps had faded, Lucia was still worried. She slowly made her way to the entrance of the dining room. When she didn't see Dalen's figure, Lucia heaved a sigh of relief. But even now, she didn't dare to say anything else. Who knew if Dalen would appear in front of her again? That night in Robert's study, Axel and Robert were deep in discussion. Axel was sitting on the sofa, and Robert sat in his office chair. Have you not interacted with Lucia in a long time? Where is she now? Robert asked. The mansion? Axel responded. When Robert saw Axel's calmness, anger arose in his heart. Do you now just not care about any of this? Axel rolled his eyes. I remember that you told me to stay away from her, that you couldn't accept her. That's right, I will not accept her, but that should not keep you from using her to our advantage. Axel kept silent and didn't say anything. You don't have anything to say? Robert pressed. Axel looked at him, and after a moment of silence said, I have heard that Dalen is investigating you. Investigate me? For what? I didn't do anything corrupt in his absence from the company. He doesn't have any evidence to investigate. Although Robert wanted Dalen to die every day, he had never done anything that would harm the business. What he wanted was the Patrick family's power. That's not it, Axel said. What is it then? Robert persisted. Dalen was attacked and that's why his car fell off the cliff, Axel said calmly. Robert's face tensed up. What did you say? He's investigating this matter? How do you know? I've only heard rumors of it. Axel shrugged. Robert couldn't help but be worried. Even if it was just hearsay, it was enough to scare him. I covered my tracks perfectly. He won't be able to find out anything, Robert said confidently. Dalen is a person who will use any means possible to achieve his goals. Do you think he will really be able to sleep peacefully at night until he's discovered who is behind the plot? Axel's voice wasn't loud, but it gave Robert a heavy feeling. Then I won't let him find out, Robert said stubbornly. I just hope that you will be careful not to get caught. I don't want anything to happen to you, Axel said. Robert looked at him with a displeased expression. Since you are so worried about me, then you should contribute to this family. If Victoria marries Dalen, she will be our path to safety. Axel stood up without a word and prepared to leave the study. Just as his hand was about to land on the doorknob, he stopped. Axel turned around and asked, You said that you saw Lucia when you went to the hospital with Mom? Robert was puzzled by Axel's question. Yes, in the, obstetrics and gynecology department. In the end, she ran away from the doctor before her checkup. She really is a piece of work. Why do you ask? It's nothing. I was just asking. Axel opened the door and walked out. There was a thoughtful look in his eyes. Why would Lucia go to the obstetrics and gynecology department? Was she not feeling well? And why run away from a checkup? Lucia left the company alone at noon, looking for something fun to distract her. After walking for a short distance, she came across a children's shop. Lucia hesitated for a moment. She couldn't control her desire to go and take a look, so she went over alone, but she did not go in. Instead, she looked at the baby clothes and shoes outside the window. She wanted to touch the baby clothes. However, she did not want to make it too obvious that she was pregnant. She could only watch with longing eyes from afar. Right across the street, a car stopped. The window rolled down slightly, revealing Axel's face inside. He looked at Lucia, who was standing outside the children's shop. When Lucia turned around, she accidentally bumped into someone on the sidewalk and immediately protected her stomach. The action of Lucia subconsciously covering her stomach caught Axel's gaze. Then a smile appeared on his face. Lucia was watching TV later when she saw a commercial about the orphanage she had volunteered for when she was in school. The commercial was asking for donations for a little boy in the orphanage who had leukemia and had no money to treat it. Lucia looked at the photos on the television and felt sorry for him. She picked up the phone beside her and was about to make a call when she received one. It was Cole. She answered. What's the matter? Are you watching this ad on the TV? Cole asked. You mean the orphanage commercial? Lucia asked. You saw it too? When I saw him, I was shocked. That little boy was so healthy and lively when we went to do volunteer work. Cole's words were laced with heartache. I don't remember this boy specifically, but I want to help, Lucia said. I've already funded everything, and I'm currently in the hospital. Come over, Cole exclaimed. Lucia was surprised. She always knew that Cole had a kind heart, but she never expected Cole's actions to be so quick. Since Cole was already at the hospital, Lucia could also go over personally and see how she could be of any help. Dalen had gone out to do something, so Lucia told John, I'm going to the hospital. If Dalen comes back first, tell him where I am. All right. When Lucia arrived at the hospital, she saw the little boy lying in bed, thin as a twig from being afflicted with his illness. His hair was shaved, and he wore a mask on his face. Because he was thin, his eyes looked bigger and more pitiful. Lucia directly handed a card to the caretaker and said, Here are $500,000. This should be enough for the operation, medical fees, and the treatment. The caretaker took the card. He was so touched that he was almost speechless. Cole had already donated, but it turned out to not be enough. With this donation, all the fees were covered. Thank you. Thank you so much, the caretaker cried. These children should be most grateful to you. Without you, they would be homeless. I am only trying my best to do what I can, Lucia said, smiling softly. Before Lucia left the room, she took another look at the little boy who was lying on the sick bed and found that he was staring at her. Lucia walked up to him and said, Don't worry, you'll definitely get better. Thank you, the boy said softly. In the corridor of the ward, Cole looked at Lucia curiously and said, I didn't expect you to be so emotional. You don't know everything about me. I've gone through a lot in my life that has changed how I react to things like this. Lucia's eyes were a little blank. Sure, but you just donated $500,000 and solved all the problems directly. Does Dalen know about this? Cole asked. Lucia looked at him with a puzzled expression and said unhappily, This is my money. Why would I ask for his permission? But you are husband and wife. Don't you need to at least talk about decisions like this? Cole did not want Lucia and Dalen to have any sort of conflict because of her rash action. Lucia resisted the urge to roll her eyes. He spends a lot more money than I do. He will easily eat a meal that costs a few $100s, so this is nothing. Cole sucked in a breath of cold air. Oh my God. The lives of rich people are simply unimaginable to me. Lucia gave him a knowing look. Right? I'm still not used to it. Cole thought for a moment. To Dalen, $500,000 wasn't that much money at all, so it should be fine. It was clear that the gap between poverty and wealthy was very large and terrible. While they were talking, Cole saw Axel walking out of a doctor's office. Oh, Axel is here as well, Cole said. This orphanage is funded by his family, so it's not unusual for him to be here. Lucia shrugged. In that case, why was there a need for donors in the first place? Shouldn't the Patrick family have been able to pay for the procedure? Cole asked curiously. Lucia also felt slightly puzzled. Axel was not a petty person. He could help without hesitation when it came to something like this. So why hadn't he funded the little boy's treatment? Axel saw Lucia and walked over with a smile on his face. You guys saw the news? Axel asked. Yeah, I saw it, so I came over to donate, Lucia said. Axel suddenly had a bad premonition and asked, How much did you donate? Lucia felt a little embarrassed when she answered, 500,000. Axel's mouth dropped open. Why did you donate so much? I'll help you get your money back. Axel turned and left. Lucia immediately pulled him back. Why are you taking the money back? I want to help the little boy. Axel turned back to her. His operation is already paid for. I just wanted to use the commercial to bring awareness to the orphanage and urge people to contribute a little bit to the cause. But what if the money comes too late and delays the treatment? Lucia pouted and said. Axel couldn't help but smile gently. Even if we had all the money, we still have to wait. It's not just a need for money. We need to find a bone marrow donor. Lucia's face immediately turned red. She looked at Cole and said, I understand. The two of them could not help but feel embarrassed. Just a moment ago, they were wondering why Axel didn't directly donate money. But it turned out that Axel was the kind one. You've never had experience with this, so it's normal for you not to know. There are many cases like this in our country every year. Money is a problem for the average family, and bone marrow is also a problem. Donating in this way also gives hope to other patients, Axel explained. Lucia could not help but smile at Axel's kindness. It was easy to remember why she had liked him so much before. However, such a gentle and kind person would never belong to her. Axel raised his hand and looked at the time. It's time to eat. Let's have a meal together. Lucia was a little hesitant and said, There's no need for that. I'll be going back soon. Axel tilted his head slightly and looked at Cole. You're not coming either? Me? Cole was surprised. Was Axel actually inviting him? Lucia also thought that Axel only invited her. Aren't you Lucia's friend? Let's go eat together. Do you also refuse? It would be very sad for me. Axel pretended to be troubled. Lucia couldn't help but laugh, so the three of them went to eat at a restaurant not far from the hospital. After ordering, the waiter poured water for them. Allow me. Axel took the pitcher from the waiter. Why are you doing this? Cole asked. Lucia was curious as well. Axel looked at Lucia and smiled. You can guess. Axel poured some water into the cup and placed it in front of Lucia. He then poured some water for Cole and placed it in front of him. Thank you. Cole felt that Axel was a real gentleman. Who would not want to be his girlfriend? Lucia found it funny when she saw Cole's expression. Just as she was about to drink from her cup of water, she heard a low and threatening voice. Did you get my permission to eat here? The familiar voice made Lucia shudder. She turned around and saw Dalen walking over. There was no warmth on his stern face, and his black eyes were sharp, and his approach caused others to tremble in fear. Dalen. Axel's expression changed as he greeted his cousin. Dalen's gaze was as calm as a pool, but it was also filled with fire. Lucia snapped out of her daze and stood up immediately. Dalen, why are you here? I'm not allowed to be here. Dalen looked at her with his cold eyes. No, I'm just surprised, Lucia said. Don't be surprised. I came here for the same reason as you, to eat a meal, Dalen responded. Lucia looked at Dalen with surprise, but she was careful as she said, Then perhaps you and I should go eat at another place. Dalen turned and walked away. When he noticed Lucia wasn't following him, he turned around and saw Lucia standing there motionlessly. With an indifferent voice, he said, What are you standing there for? Lucia looked at Cole. You guys eat. I'll go with Dalen. Good. Fine. Cole knew that there was nothing he could do. Lucia looked at Axel again. Just as she was about to say goodbye to him, Dalen grabbed her wrist and she was pulled out. Ah! Lucia tried to shake him off. She lowered her voice in anger. Dalen, what are you doing? You hurt my hand. It wouldn't hurt if you didn't struggle, Dalen threatened. Axel watched the two of them disappear with a worried look on his face. His gaze fell on the cup in front of Lucia. How about you eat all this? I've lost my appetite, Cole said. Axel looked at Cole and responded without changing his expression. What? After ordering so many dishes, it would be a waste if you didn't eat them. All right then. Cole smiled uncomfortably. Of course he knew that Axel had only invited him because of Lucia. He hadn't thought that things would turn out like this. How awkward. Lucia got into Dalen's car. The car was expensive and spacious, but the atmosphere was stifling. Lucia didn't even dare to breathe loudly. She glanced at Dalen's fearsome expression and realized that he hadn't gone to the restaurant to eat, but to find her. Carefully weighing her options, she said, When I was in school, I did some volunteer work at the orphanage. I saw a TV commercial that said a kid who lives there is sick, so I went to donate money without thinking much about it. You're not mad at this, are you? I told John to tell you before I left, and I didn't mean to hide it from you. Dalen ignored Lucia's comment and asked, It's obvious that you're very happy when you're with Axel. Was it an accident? Dalen thought about the scene between the two he just saw and felt a sense of irritation. It was as if a tornado had arrived so suddenly that he couldn't control it no matter what he did. How can you think that? And if there really is a doubt, then you should know that Cole was also present at that time, so nothing could have happened. Lucia couldn't help but retort. From what you're saying, it seems like you're disappointed. Dalen's eyes turned sinister. I'm not disappointed, Lucia argued. If I didn't show up just now, what would you have done with him after dinner? Dalen stared at her with a dangerous look. We wouldn't have done anything. Lucia didn't know why Dalen asked that, but she felt guilty. She thought Dalen wouldn't have a bad reaction since Cole was present. You're lying. I'm warning you. Never lie to me. Dalen's expression was calm, but his eyes were stormy. Lucia looked up at him in shock. What are you trying to prove? I have already confessed to you that I am not lying. If you want to be honest with me, why not tell me about it in the first place? Maybe I would let you go. Now you should give me what I want, Dalen said. Lucia subconsciously tensed up. clenching her delicate and white hands tightly. What do you mean? What do you think I want? Dalen said wickedly. Lucia didn't want to understand. She could feel the fear in her heart. Lucia bit her lower lip, but she still couldn't control the trembling of her lips. It's just a normal physical exchange between husband and wife. Why are you so frightened? Dalen was neither angry nor frustrated. He almost looked calm. However, the more calm he looked, the more terrifying it was. Lucia didn't want to understand the meaning behind Dalen's words, but it was impossible for Lucia to deceive herself. Dalen, Lucia began. Is your period not over? Dalen interrupted. Under Dalen's calm but extremely dangerous gaze, Lucia had to tell him the truth. It's over, but... Then don't refuse me, Dalen interrupted her impatiently. If this were to happen before she knew she was pregnant, she definitely wouldn't have refused, but now it was difficult for her to decide. She didn't know if it was just an illusion, but the car seemed to be speeding up, and her heart was racing. It was so fast that it seemed as though it could jump out of her chest. What should she do? How could she stop Dalen's actions? If she had known this would happen, she definitely wouldn't have gone out to donate. That sick little boy made her think of her future child. She wanted to do a good deed so that the child in her womb could be born safely. Dalen's cold eyes stared at Lucia's face. The car entered the mansion and stopped at the gate. After the car door was opened by Spencer, Dalen went out, but Lucia sat in the car without moving an inch further. Dalen turned around and looked at her coldly. You want me to help you get out? Lucia's entire body trembled when she met Dalen's eyes. She slowly got out of the car. Then she followed Dalen through the door and into the hall. Upon entering the hall, Lucia stopped walking. Dalen lost all patience now. Without a word, he walked up to Lucia and carried her up the stairs. Dalen, what are you doing? Let me go! Lucia didn't want to go upstairs. She reached out and wrapped one of her arms around the banister. It was like hugging a piece of driftwood. Her determination to not go upstairs was so strong. Dalen shot a sinister gaze at her. Dalen, please don't do this to me. What did I do wrong? Is this why you wanted me back at the mansion? Just to hurt me? Lucia's eyes were filled with tears of fear. You think this kind of thing is meant to hurt you? I don't understand what's so scary, Dalen said with frustration. But Lucia couldn't say that she wanted to protect the baby in her womb. You'll change your mind. Dalen pried her hand away from the banister. No! Lucia tried her best to resist, but how could she beat Dalen? Her hand was pried away from any hope of safety. Dalen headed upstairs. After entering Dalen's room, the moment he set her down, Lucia pleaded, Don't treat me like this. Don't treat me like this. I don't want to beg you anymore. Dalen reached out his hand and held her face. The only thing you can do is to obey me. Resisting won't do you any good, will it? Dalen's expression was fierce. Lucia's breathing hastened, and her face paled from fright. Now that things had gotten to this stage, Lucia was well aware that she no longer had any chance to fight back. Dalen would definitely want her. Then if I submit, will you be more gentle? Lucia asked. Dalen's face came close to hers. Will you be satisfied if it's gentle? Dalen teased. Lucia pulled her face away from his, and she took a few steps away from him. Promise me you'll be gentle, and I'll do it. If you don't, I won't let you touch me, Lucia bargained. Dalen approached with a dark face. Upon seeing this, Lucia turned around and ran towards the door. However, the door was locked. She was so anxious that she started banging on the door with her hands. Open the door! Is there anyone outside? Let me out! Lucia was so anxious that she started crying. She didn't give up trying to open the door, but in the next second, Dalen's shadow fell over her. "Ah! Let me go! Let me go!" Lucia yelled. Dalen said with a heavy breath, "Even if you scream, it's useless. Without my permission, who would dare to open this door?" Lucia struggled in his arms. "Dalen, you can't do this to me. I want to leave. I want to leave you. I also want to leave the mansion. I don't want to stay here. Let me go." "Why are you so resistant to me? I can't touch you. Or are you wishing I was someone else? If I were Axel, you wouldn't refuse, right?" Dalen's voice was vicious. "No!" Lucia screamed. "You've certainly done it very well in the past," Dalen said. Outside the room, John, who was not far from the door, hurried to open it, but was stopped by Edward. "Why are you blocking my way? I'm going to open the door. Didn't you hear Miss Lucia knocking?" John was about to die from anxiety. "Do you want to be fired?" Edward warned. "Why would I even care about being fired at this point? Didn't you hear how scary the sound was inside? The young madame's voice is so miserable, so something terrible must have happened," John said miserably. Edward said with a sullen face, "Mr. Patrick won't let anything bad happen to her." "How do you know? Didn't you see how scary Mr. Patrick's face was when they returned? Did Miss Lucia offend him again? Maybe no one told Mr. Patrick that she had gone to the hospital, which is why he was so angry. Then I should tell Mr. Patrick right now," John said hurriedly. "You can't go inside this door. This is your duty," Edward said seriously. "You!" John was anxious and angry, but there was nothing he could do. John's behavior was completely impulsive. If he went in to stop Dalen, it would only make things worse. Lucia leaned against the door, ready for what was about to come. "Dalen, please be gentle with me." Lucia was out of breath. Her face was blushing red, and her lips were quivering. The sound of Dalen's heavy breathing was next to Lucia's ears. It was scorching hot, as if it was going to burn any piece of skin. "Didn't you say that you couldn't do it? What do you say now?" Dalen asked. As long as it didn't hurt her child, she would do anything, even if it meant cooperating with him. Every nerve in her body was taut. Suddenly, she felt a sharp pain in her neck. "Ah! It hurts! Don't do that!" Lucia shouted. Dalen had bit her, causing Lucia to lift her neck in pain. "I can tell that your mind is wandering. Tell me, who are you thinking about?" Dalen's eyes were black, like a beast in rage. "I have my back to you, and you can tell that I'm distracted?" Lucia felt humiliation and anger in her heart. "Why do you have to come up with so many excuses?" "Even with your back facing me, I can still tell from your reaction that you are absent-minded," Dalen insisted. Lucia no longer cared about Dalen's fearsome judgment. She could not bear the pain any longer and turned her head. She found his lips and pressed them to hers, trying to keep the touch soft and warm. Dalen couldn't help but pause for a second. Lucia felt the change in Dalen. However, Dalen couldn't let the kiss be over in just a few seconds. Just when Lucia had to pull away for a breath, Dalen's hand held her face, forcing her to keep their lips together. Who knew how much time had passed? Dalen still didn't let her go. "I noticed that you seem to have gained some weight. Your body is more fleshy than before," Dalen said as he held her waist. Lucia was so frightened that her secret might be revealed, but she couldn't show it on the surface. "You seem to care about my waist," she said, trying to think of how she could change the subject. "Men like women with small waists," Dalen said. Lucia retorted, "Then let me tell you, now that I'm eating well in the mansion and I don't have to work hard at the company, My waist will get thicker and thicker. So since you don't like it, don't touch it. Dalen again passionately covered Lucia's mouth with his own. Lucia had discovered it in the past. No matter how energetic Dalen was the night before, he would still wake up in the morning with even greater vigor. On the other hand, Lucia would have to sleep until noon before she could wake up. But this time, after Dalen got up, Lucia opened her eyes. Waves of throbbing pain in her lower abdomen caused her to panic. Dalen was standing by the bed, putting on his shirt. Lucia moved her body and rolled over, just as her feet touched the ground. She felt a sharp pain in her lower abdomen, causing her to cry out involuntarily. Her body went limp as she fell to the ground. On the other side of the bed, Dalen thought that Lucia was overreacting, so he said with an indifferent expression, "You don't need to get up." Lucia didn't say anything as she knelt on the ground, gasping for air. She covered her stomach with one hand. Dalen stopped buttoning his cuffs and frowned slightly. He walked around the bed and squatted in front of Lucia, lifting her face. Lucia's eyes were unfocused. She was breathing heavily and her face was pale. Lucia held Dalen's arm tightly and pleaded, "Dalen, please, send me to the hospital. My stomach hurts." As she spoke, tears began to roll down her cheeks. "I'm begging you, take me to the hospital. I'm carrying—" Before she could finish her sentence, her stomach hurt again. It was so painful that Lucia's vision went dark, and she fainted into Dalen's arms. Dalen's breathing became heavier. Lucia's pale face made his heart tighten. He pulled the blanket off the bed, wrapped it around her, and carried her out of the room. In the hospital room, Dalen sat on the sofa with his legs crossed. He had a cold expression on his face. The doctor, who was standing in front of Dalen, did not even dare to breathe loudly. Not only is your wife pregnant, she's been pregnant for 2 months. It's dangerous to have sex this early in the pregnancy." The doctor cut off his words as he saw Dalen's sharp gaze. Dalen's expression turned even uglier with guilt. How could he have known that she was pregnant? Lucia didn't say a single word about it. Dalen's gaze swept across the bed and looked at Lucia, who was still unconscious. "Go on," he told the doctor. "Most importantly, your wife is carrying twins," the doctor said. Dalen was stunned and looked at the doctor. "Twins?" "Yes, twin births are more dangerous than single ones, so it's fortunate that she's safe and sound right now," the doctor explained. Dalen looked at Lucia on the bed again. The last time they had been together was at the hotel. She must have become pregnant after that, and that's why she avoided him at all times. Dalen kept thinking about Lucia. She hadn't wanted to come back to the mansion, and she didn't even budge when he threatened to take the company from her. And, given that she didn't want to be touched, her resistance was especially intense. So, all this while, it was because she was pregnant? But why didn't she say so? He almost injured his own child. Lucia, who was lying on the sickbed, woke up in a daze. When her consciousness gradually returned, she immediately touched her lower abdomen in panic. However, how could she tell if her child was still there or not? She turned her head around in panic and saw Dalen's sharp, dark eyes. His face looked increasingly gloomy. Lucia withdrew her hand from her stomach and sat up on the bed. What should she say? Should she ask if the child was still there? But what if he didn't know? Was that possible? Why did Dalen keep looking at her and not say anything? Lucia felt flustered and uneasy, as well as a bit guilty. The feeling in the room was depressing. Nothing to say? The moment Dalen opened his mouth, shivers went down Lucia's spine. Is my body all right? I told you before that I can't do it. You just wouldn't listen. Now I'm in the hospital. Are you happy now? As Lucia spoke, she did not look at Dalen and kept shifting to the side. Lucia noticed that Dalen's gaze turned cold. She pursed her lips but didn't say anything. She was nervous. "Whose baby is it?" Dalen asked. Lucia was stunned by Dalen's question and retorted, "What do you mean by that? Of course the child is yours. If it wasn't yours, whose would it be?" "Since it's my child, why didn't you say so?" Dalen's face was indifferent. Lucia lowered her gaze and stared at the blanket. With a gloomy expression, she replied, "I wanted to tell you as soon as possible, but you'd lost your memory. I didn't know if you would want this child." Then she turned and looked at Dalen with sadness. "Do you want the baby? If you don't, can you just leave the child with me?" "Did I ever say that I don't want it?" Dalen asked coldly. Lucia looked at Dalen with a hopeful gaze, and she couldn't help but feel a bit excited. "Do you really want this child?" she asked. "Are you questioning my ability to be a good parent?" Dalen's expression darkened. "No, I'm not questioning you," Lucia said quickly. Even if Lucia had thought that in the beginning, she wouldn't say it in front of Dalen. "I just want you to protect this child and not let it get hurt. No matter what you think, the baby is important to me," Lucia pleaded as she looked at him. "Who dares to harm my child? If you tell me you're pregnant, why would I harm you?" Dalen asked. Lucia remained silent. Even though her first child had been protected by Dalen, it was still gone. Now that Dalen had lost his memory, he couldn't remember that part. She didn't want to talk about it again. "When were you going to tell me about the child?" Dalen asked. Lucia paused for a moment. "Wait, I was going to wait until you recovered your memories." "What if I never recover? Were you going to take the kids and run?" he continued. "Yes, that was my plan." Lucia told the truth. Dalen sneered. "You have guts." However, now that Dalen knew about her pregnancy and accepted it, Lucia felt relieved. After their conversation, she fell asleep again. Lucia was suffering from a fever, so she had to stay in the hospital to keep her baby healthy as well. Lucia couldn't stop thinking about her first baby. She was so worried, but she tried to remain calm. After all, it was different this time. During her last pregnancy, Linda had drugged her, but this time Linda would have no chance to interfere. Across town, Linda was sitting in her living room drinking tea. Her maid, Abigail, rushed in looking panicked. Linda's face was very calm as she asked, "What happened? What did you find out?" "Yes, madame. You told me to go and ask, and I did. Lucia, she is pregnant," Abigail reported. "What? Pregnant?" Linda was very surprised as she had never expected it to be this. "That's right. That's why Mr. Patrick took her to the hospital," Abigail explained. "Then how is the baby now?" Linda tensed up. "Seeing how anxious you are, you must be very happy about the child." Abigail was a bit confused at why Linda would be so worried about Lucia's child. Linda put down the cup in her hand and said slowly, "Although I don't like Lucia, the child in her womb is, after all, the blood of my family. How can I not be concerned? Then I have one more thing to say that should make you even happier." Abigail grinned. "What is it?" Linda asked. "Not only is she pregnant, she is pregnant with twins in her womb." "What? Is that true?" Linda exclaimed. "If it wasn't absolutely true, I wouldn't tell you," Abigail said. Linda's face was filled with happiness. "I have to admit, Lucia has good luck. She is actually pregnant again and even pregnant with twins." Abigail nodded. "This is definitely such a blessing." Linda continued, "My biggest wish is to see Dalen married with children. Although I am very dissatisfied with Lucia, as long as she gives birth and Dalen insists on having her, I can only compromise. Twins. Of the 2 children, one of them must be a son. We can be at ease," Abigail said. Linda smiled and nodded. Lucia's 3 meals a day in the hospital were all delivered by John himself. John said it was because the food and hygiene at the hospital wasn't as good as it was at the mansion. John had personally witnessed Dalen carrying Lucia and leaving the mansion in a hurry this morning. He was so scared that something horrible had happened. Did Dalen cause some serious injuries to Lucia? Was she in life-threatening danger? Later, he heard it was because Lucia was pregnant. After being sent to the hospital, she was safe and sound. Only then did John's heart calm down. This state of mind was like a roller coaster. It was really unbearable for him. It was a good thing that Lucia was looking better now that the worst had passed. John thought that nothing was as amazing as having a child. As long as it was Dalen's child, it would be safe. No matter how cruel Dalen was, that child was still his. John frowned as he watched Lucia eat. Then he asked, "What's wrong? Doesn't it taste good?" "It's quite light," Lucia said. "This was the doctor's instructions. You can't eat heavy and oily food." "Just endure it, madame," John said encouragingly. "I know. For the sake of the children, I will." Lucia stuffed the food into her mouth in big mouthfuls. "Madame, don't worry. Although the dishes are light, I will have the kitchen make all sorts of delicious dishes for you to eat in the future," John assured her. "This must have been hard on you." Lucia smiled. "I think it's you who is having a hard time," John said. "It's weird, but I haven't thrown up this time. That's pretty unusual, right?" Lucia asked. "It means that you are pregnant with a boy," John said. Lucia was surprised by John's conclusion. "Really?" "Well, it's just an old wives' tale, but sometimes those are the most true things. Or maybe it's just because you're having twins," John replied. Lucia choked on her food and could not believe what she heard. "Did you say twins? What do you mean?" John was surprised. "Madame, don't you know that you have twins? You have 2 children in your belly." Lucia couldn't believe it. She touched her belly. Were there really 2 children? Or had John made a mistake? Just then, the air slightly shook as Dalen's tall figure walked in. Lucia quickly asked, "Dalen, am I carrying twins?" "Yes." Dalen sat down on the sofa and crossed his long legs. "Then why didn't you tell me?" Lucia frowned in displeasure. "Do you need me to tell you? You didn't even tell me about your pregnancy," Dalen shot back. Lucia was rendered somewhat speechless by his words, but she said, "Still, you should have told me." Dalen did not argue with her. "Eat your food." After Lucia finished her lunch, John packed everything up and left the hospital. Only Lucia and Dalen were left in the room. Lucia leaned back on the headboard, staring at the ceiling out of boredom. Occasionally, she would look at Dalen, who sat on the sofa and remained expressionless. Although Dalen didn't do anything, the room was so quiet that it made Lucia anxious. "Dalen, does everyone know that I'm pregnant?" Lucia asked. Dalen didn't even raise his head. "Are you worried about that?" "Has anyone come to ask about me?" Lucia continued. "Nope." "Victoria didn't come to ask about it?" Dalen paused for a second and then looked up at Lucia. "What are you trying to say?" Lucia shifted her gaze. "Nothing. Just take care of yourself and the babies." Dalen shook his head. "I don't need you to tell me that. I know how to do it." Lucia's expression changed instantly. She felt extremely unhappy. Why was Dalen being defensive of Victoria? If Dalen cared so much, why did he call Lucia back to the mansion? Who was Dalen trying to retrieve his lost memories for? For himself? Or for Victoria? Lucia knew in her heart that it wasn't because of herself. "Are you questioning me?" Dalen's face was dark. "I don't dare." Lucia tugged on the blanket and closed her eyes, trying to fall asleep. Dalen stared at Lucia. He obviously knew that Lucia's thoughts were different, but he didn't want to talk about Victoria. He just couldn't understand why Victoria was the only one he could remember. Had something happened that he didn't know about? No matter what, Lucia had his children in her womb. No one could dispute it. Robert found out about Lucia's pregnancy and hospitalization a few days later. He specifically went to congratulate Linda, secretly trying to find out more about her reaction. Upon entering, Linda was almost beaming with joy.
Linda, I really congratulate you. This is such good news.
Robert sat on the sofa opposite Linda.
What are you congratulating me for? They haven't been born yet.
It will be only months from now, Linda said. Her response was strange. Robert looked at Linda suspiciously, but he didn't say anything.
How many months has it been? He asked.
More than 2 months, Linda responded.
So she will give birth in October. In the blink of an eye, my sister-in-law will have a grandson,
Robert said happily. Then he thought of something else and said,
Since Lucia is pregnant with the Patrick family's children, then you cannot be angry with her, right?
Linda said, How can I not accept my fate at this time? I will not interfere in this matter anymore, so you can feel free to do as you please. Robert looked helpless, but he immediately understood what was going on. After Lucia became pregnant, Linda's attitude immediately changed. When Robert returned home, his expression was bitter and angry. When she saw her husband, Catherine quickly asked, Is Lucia really pregnant?
Can't you tell by my expression?
Robert said snappily. Catherine felt wronged. I just had to ask again. If she is pregnant, what kind of attitude does Linda have about it?
Attitude? Her attitude took a complete turn and she's really happy.
Robert sat on the sofa angrily. Then she means to accept Lucia? Catherine asked anxiously.
She's carrying Dalen's children. It has nothing to do with Lucia. She will accept any woman who gives Dalen a child.
Robert sighed. Catherine was anxious. How do you think this situation will develop? Lucia was about to get a divorce and abandon Dalen. Is Dalen willing to let her have this child? After all, he has lost her memories now.
Are you stupid? If he did not want this child, would he make Lucia stay in the hospital to protect her baby?
Robert was infuriated that Catherine didn't use her brain before she spoke. Then, if that's the case, won't Dalen not divorce Lucia? Catherine asked. Robert didn't say anything. Even when she wasn't pregnant, this marriage was hard to sabotage. Now it would be even more difficult. Then what about Victoria? Catherine could not help but feel sorry for Victoria. After bitterly waiting for so long, she ended up disappointed again. How could she bear it? Robert rolled his eyes.
She's useless. Even after staying in the mansion for so long, she still hasn't been able to conceive Dalen's child.
If Dalen doesn't accept her, she won't be able to carry on by herself, Catherine cried.
Can't you think of another way? Don't you know how to scheme? Robert asked.
Catherine racked her brains. What if we drug Dalen? But how could Victoria do that? She's not Lucia. She's not as shameless.
Shameless? It was because of her naivety that she lost so completely. How many years has she been involved with the Patrick family? What are you talking about? With a friend like you, no wonder she didn't improve at all.
Robert was so angry that he got up and left the hall. Victoria, who was hiding in the dark, heard every word. Tears welled up in her eyes, and she clenched her hands so tightly that it hurt. She then turned around and returned to her room. As soon as she entered her room, tears began to fall. Robert was right. She should not and could not refute him. She didn't cry because of Robert's nasty words. She cried because Dalen had gotten Lucia pregnant again. Lucia was pregnant with Dalen's child, and in the end she was chased out of the mansion. For Victoria, the days after Dalen lost his memories were her happiest days. She had felt hopeful, and everyone was standing by her side. So what was she now? Jerica, who had stayed in the room, was completely clueless about what was going on. Seeing Victoria crying, she was shocked. "Miss, what's wrong? What happened?" "I thought I would beat Lucia. I thought that I was in control. But not only has Lucia returned to the mansion, she is also pregnant with Dalen's child. How can I accept this? I stayed by Dalen's side for so long, and he never did anything intimate to me. Why did he make it so easy for Lucia to conceive a child?" Victoria almost burst into loud tears, complaining about the injustice of the world. All of her opportunities were taken by Lucia. Was she really not ruthless enough, like Robert had said? Wasn't she shameless enough? However, when Lucia wasn't in the mansion, she had tried to get close to Dalen and intentionally exposed herself in front of him. Dalen's stare had indeed fallen on her, but it was not even 3 seconds before he retracted his gaze. There was not a single ripple in his eyes. Hearing Victoria's words, Jerica was also extremely shocked. She is pregnant again? I know. She must have used some method to climb into Mr. Patrick's bed. A shameless woman like her is truly unheard of. Jerica was unable to suppress the anger in her heart. But who cares if she is shameless? She is pregnant with Dalen's child. The bloodline is the most important thing. It is something that I can never have. Victoria's fierce gaze was filled with jealousy. Miss, don't be too anxious. Who knows if that child will be born? The pregnancy could fail again like it did the first time. She should not be able to get what belongs to you, miss. Jerica consoled her. Victoria couldn't help but furrow her brows together when she heard Jerica's words. However, her heart was moved. But then she thought of how it was different from the last time and said, "The last time the child wasn't born because Linda interfered. But this time Linda is happy about the pregnancy. She probably won't interfere again." That's true. Jerica couldn't seem to think of any good methods. Victoria truly felt that she was too naive. In this world, the person who is willing to go the farthest would always win. A gentle breeze blew by Victoria, bringing with it a fragrant aroma that cleared her mind. It immediately calmed down the sadness in her heart. Why should she be in such a mess? So what if Lucia was pregnant with a child? Would she give up? She definitely wouldn't. She had loved Dalen for so many years. As long as she was alive, she would continue to love him. At this moment, someone knocked on the door and Catherine walked in. Jerica glanced at Victoria before leaving. Although Victoria had calmed down, there were still traces of tears on her face. Catherine could tell at a glance that Victoria was upset. "You already know what happened?" Catherine asked. Victoria nodded. "You and Robert must be very disappointed in me. You can't be blamed for this. Lucia is so manipulative. Dalen has already been tricked by her, so what can we do?" Catherine comforted her. "Catherine, you don't have to comfort me anymore. I know I was wrong. I shouldn't have been so soft-hearted," Victoria said. Catherine sighed helplessly. "But now that Lucia is pregnant, it's too late." The door wasn't closed, so when Axel passed by, he poked his head in. Standing in the doorway, he asked, "What's going on?" "Do you know about Lucia's pregnancy?" Catherine asked. Axel's eyes flashed and he nodded. "I heard about it from Dad." "Victoria's feeling sad right now. I'm comforting her," Catherine said. Axel walked into the room. His gentle demeanor always helped people feel at ease. He stopped a few steps away from Victoria and looked at her. "It's surprising, but do you still insist on being with Dalen?" Axel asked. Everyone had been trying to comfort Victoria, but only Axel was willing to ask the question everyone else was thinking. Victoria gathered her thoughts, giving her a clearer resolve. She couldn't give up. "Of course I insist on being with him. I have loved Dalen for so many years.
What claim does Lucia have on his heart compared to me? We just have to wait until she runs out of luck. Axel lightly patted Victoria's shoulders a few times. Then don't be sad. The last time I saw Lucia, she wasn't happy either. With that, he turned and left the room. Seeing that Victoria's expression was getting better, Catherine immediately smiled and said, Look, everyone is supporting you. Don't give up. I know. Victoria wiped the tears off her face. When everyone left the room, Victoria sat on the sofa. She looked in the direction of the door and thought about Axel, who had comforted her just now. How could she have forgotten Axel? How did he feel about Lucia having a baby? Axel often met with Lucia. Who knows if they were together before and no one knew about it? In Victoria's sinister eyes, there was a smile that said she was determined to get what she wanted. This time, she would not give Lucia the chance to make a comeback. In the hospital, Lucia was lying on her bed, her eyes mostly on the IV bag hanging above her. Those who didn't know would think that she was afraid that the bag would fall down. In fact, she was only afraid that the bag would empty and air would be pushed into her body and harm the babies. This pregnancy was different from the first. Now that she had 2 small lives in her womb, she had to be more careful. Even now, she was unable to recover from the surprise that she was having twins. It was so unexpected. What did Dalen think? Was he happy simply because they were a continuation of his bloodline? Or some other reason? Did it feel familiar in his memory? Lucia turned her head away and saw Dalen staring at her. His eyes were dark and deep, with a certain type of coldness. It made her heart beat a little faster. It was very quiet in the room, so quiet that one could almost hear the air conditioner blowing. Lucia's breathing became as tight as her heartbeat. It was as if she couldn't bear Dalen's eyes. Lucia pursed her lips and lay quietly on the bed. However, her eyes were still staring at the IV bag. The next morning, it was her doctor who came in to give her a new IV and set up her bag. Lucia bit her lip as the doctor's needle pierced her flesh. Dalen's deep gaze fell on Lucia's face. Her clear eyes seemed to be shrouded in a layer of pain. She looked so nervous. Be careful, and make sure you're injecting the correct amount of medicine, Dalen said. The doctor nodded. Of course, sir. Lucia looked at Dalen in surprise. Dalen, why are you so worried about me? Lucia asked. These are my children, Dalen explained. Lucia was silent for a while. She looked at Dalen, who was staring at the computer in front of him without saying a word. She thought about when she was pregnant with her first child. She had been healthy and didn't need to be hospitalized, but she had still lost her child. Of course, at that time, Dalen wasn't as distant and apathetic as he was now. However, Dalen being here every day relieved Lucia's mental stress a lot. Even if it was just for the sake of her children, she was satisfied. Under the blanket, Lucia stroked her belly with her small hands. It felt larger than before. Although it had only been 2 months since they were twins, she was going to grow bigger than normal. Dalen, do you think the children will look exactly the same when they are born? Lucia thought about how that would be especially adorable. Dalen's black eyes moved slightly. When his gaze fell on Lucia, the smile on her face made his heart beat a little faster. Nope, Dalen told her mercilessly. Why not? Don't twins usually look the same? Lucia's eyebrows creased, as if she felt that there was no problem with her statement. Dalen's black eyes were clear and cold. They aren't identical twins. Lucia sighed. They aren't identical twins. Lucia sighed. It would be so much more fun if they looked exactly the same, Lucia said with a tinge of disappointment. Then her face turned into a smile again, as if she had a revelation. Then who do you think they will look like more? Me or you? Dalen's expression immediately darkened. He said in a deep and cold tone, Why are you talking so much?
What? I just said a few words, Lucia complained. But when she saw Dalen's oppressive gaze, she bit her tongue and became quiet. When she looked over, Dalen's gaze was on the computer screen again. Really? Was the computer better looking than her? Lucia was so angry that she turned her back to him. After she turned around, Dalen raised his gaze slightly and looked at Lucia's slender back. In the midst of the silence, someone knocked on the door. Abigail came into the room and stood by Lucia's bed. Lucia looked very surprised. She sat up on the bed and couldn't help but to look at Dalen. Mr. Patrick, your mother wanted to come and visit. She brought some snacks for your wife and also has some high-quality soup. After your mother found out that Lucia is pregnant, she has been extremely happy. Abigail turned to look at Lucia and said, She wanted me to ask you, how is your body feeling? Is there anything uncomfortable? After all, it will be harder to birth twins. When Lucia heard this, she rolled her eyes. There's nothing to be uncomfortable about. I can leave the hospital tomorrow. Tell Mom that I'm fine, and thank her for her concern, Lucia said unhappily. But she had to admit that she was a little flattered, because Linda had never treated her like this before. Very good. This way Linda will feel at ease. Abigail put down the things in her hands and said, Linda said that she will come to see you in the mansion after you will be discharged. You just need to think about the babies. Don't worry about anything else. All right, I will, Lucia said. Then I'll be going. Abigail bowed her head to Dalen and Lucia before turning around and leaving the sick room. Lucia was dazed. Linda's transformation must be because of the children in her womb. But could she trust that Linda was sincere? After all, previously Linda had said kind words in front of Dalen back in the mansion. Later on, Lucia had found out that those were just performative words for Dalen to hear. However, the children in her womb were Dalen's, and therefore they were part of the bloodline of the Patrick family. Linda hadn't drugged her, and the children were healthy, so there was no need to treat her badly. Just as Lucia was in a daze, Dalen's deep and intimidating voice rang out. Do you want to eat the soup? Lucia regained her senses. There's no need, right? I'm not hungry right now, so I don't really feel like eating. There was still a shadow of doubt in Lucia's heart. These were all things that Linda had sent over. Could it be? It wasn't that Lucia was suspicious, but she really didn't dare to eat anything that came from Linda. Just in case. After all, Linda was so fond of Victoria. Would Lucia's pregnancy make her unhappy? But Linda wouldn't dare to drug her in front of Dalen, right? Still, Lucia was afraid. Later, when John came, Dalen was not in the room. John saw the gift from Linda and asked, Madame, did someone come to see you today? It must be your friend. Lucia looked at the things Abigail had given her and said, Linda had Abigail bring these. Mrs. Patrick, she must have found out about your pregnancy and was happy. John didn't think too much about it and remained positive for Lucia's sake. Lucia looked hesitant as she asked, Do you think Linda will truly like the children in my womb? John immediately felt a little uncomfortable. Do you mean, you think she will drug you the same as before? Lucia trusted John, so she told him the truth. I don't know, it's just, I can't dare to eat it. John pondered for a moment and said, Then don't eat it. I will help you settle this when I leave later. I can take the soup and do a drug test on it. Lucia frowned slightly and asked, Is it okay for me to do this, though? If there's really no problem with it and the madam finds out that we were suspicious, she will definitely say that I was wrong. Miss Lucia, don't worry. I won't let anyone else know. Besides, you have 2 children in your womb right now. How important is that? You shouldn't be allowed to eat anything that is given to you by others. Everything will be taken care of by me, and I will personally supervise your food preparation. There will definitely be no problems, John said. Lucia felt some comfort in her heart when she heard this. When John left, he took the soup with him. When Dalen arrived, he glanced at the table beside Lucia and asked, "Where are the items?" "Oh, I ate some, and I asked John to take the rest back home. I'll eat them when I get back to the mansion," Lucia said with a straight face. At this moment, there was a knock on the door. Spencer pushed the door and entered. "Mr. Patrick, Robert and his wife are here." Dalen's eyes slightly sunk. His expression was unfathomable. Lucia knew that they must have found out about her pregnancy and came to see her. As soon as Catherine entered, she looked overjoyed. She went up to Lucia and hugged her. "Lucia, you are now officially part of the Patrick family. Not only are you pregnant with Dalen's child, you have twins. You are the first one in our family to ever give birth to twins." Is that so?" Embarrassed, Lucia withdrew her hand from her stomach. "That's right. When I found out, I was very happy. I've bought you a lot of nutrition products, food, and supplies." Lucia turned her head to the side and saw that Robert was placing all the food on the table. She felt so overwhelmed. She had just dealt with Linda's offering, and now Robert's family was here with more. She was already worried about Linda's food, not to mention food from Robert's family, who always harbored ill intentions. She couldn't even think about it. After putting it down, Robert said, "We were so concerned when we heard you were hospitalized. Fortunately, you are safe and sound. Otherwise, that would definitely be a worrisome matter." "Thank you, Robert. The children are very important to me. I will not let anything happen to them. If someone hurts my child, I will definitely punish them." Lucia looked at Dalen after she said this. "We'll be sure to protect you," Robert said with a serious expression. It was a pity, Lucia thought, that Robert didn't act in movies. He was very good at lying. Now, since they were both acting, Lucia had to admit that she also had to use this talent. "I know that you two have always doted on me, and I'm really happy. In the future, with all of you worrying about me, I won't have to worry about anything," Lucia said with a smile on her face. "That's good." Catherine lightly patted the back of Lucia's hand, as if she was her mother. Robert looked at Dalen and said, "Dalen, please accompany Lucia more. The health of a pregnant woman is very important." "Thank you, Robert." Dalen's face was expressionless. After Robert and his wife left, Lucia's heart relaxed. "Dalen, can you stop more people from coming to the room? I've already seen more than enough visitors. I don't want anyone to disturb me." Lucia turned to face Dalen, pouting with a wronged expression. Dalen paused for a while before he answered, "Got it." After nearly a week, Lucia could finally leave the hospital and return to the mansion. When Lucia went to her room, Dalen asked, "Where are you going?" Lucia was stunned. "Back to my room?" John, who was behind Lucia, immediately said, "Madame, all your things have been moved to the master bedroom." This meant that Lucia was now sharing a bed with Dalen. Lucia was surprised that Dalen would do such a thing. "Is there a problem?" Dalen asked. Lucia quickly said, "No problem. It's just that the doctors said we shouldn't." Lucia's voice trailed off, but even if she didn't say it, Dalen should know what she meant. Sure enough, Dalen understood. He said quite bluntly, "I won't touch you when you're pregnant. Even if you have needs of your own, just bear with it." Lucia's face immediately flushed red. She looked over at John, who had his head lowered. How could Dalen say that in front of a servant? After entering the bedroom, Lucia angrily asked, "You did that on purpose, didn't you? Didn't you see that John was still there?" Dalen ignored her. He took off his coat and threw it to the side. "Also, what do you mean I have to bear with it if I need anything?" Lucia urged. Finally, Dalen spoke up. He said, "You don't want to endure?" No, it's not that. I won't have any needs." Lucia felt that it was too frustrating to talk to Dalen. Did Dalen really not understand?
Well, just in case there is, just endure it, Dalen said lightly as he walked past her.
Seeing Dalen walk away, Lucia felt that she had to remain calm. The doctor said that emotions are important for the babies, and she shouldn't be overstimulated. Why was she arguing with Dalen when she knew it was pointless? A cell phone rang nearby, and Lucia was stunned for 2 seconds before she realized that it was her cell phone ringing. Everything of hers had been moved to the master bedroom, so her phone was there as well. Lucia grabbed her phone and saw that it was Cole.
"Hello, Cole."
"What do you mean?"
Cole asked in a displeased manner.
Huh?
Lucia was confused.
"I went to the hospital to see you, but Spencer said you wouldn't see anyone. Why won't you let me see you?" Cole asked.
Lucia rubbed her nose. I didn't know you were coming to the hospital. If I had known you were there, I wouldn't have said that.
I'm still mad at you. After I found out that you were pregnant, everything made sense. You have been acting weird for weeks. Why were you hiding this from me?"
Cole continued berating her with questions. I didn't even tell Dalen about this, so don't be mad, Lucia said.
"But why didn't you tell me? You've just been carrying this all by yourself. What exactly were you thinking?"
Cole asked, still feeling upset. I was afraid you'd tell Dalen, Lucia said truthfully.
"What? Lucia, you think I'm that kind of person? Let me tell you, no one could have made me tell Dalen, not even if they threatened me," Cole declared.
Lucia listened to what Cole said with doubt. She rolled her eyes and said in a faint voice, "Last time you told Dalen that Linda drugged me." Cole's voice died down, and he said with a lack of confidence,
I did it for your own good.
With my current relationship with Dalen, I really didn't dare to tell anyone, Lucia explained.
But your stomach would have given it away eventually, Cole said.
I know, so I was trying to think of a way out of the whole situation, but Dalen found out and now there is no way to hide it. However, I did not expect Dalen to accept the children, so that's been good. Cole sighed.
How could Dalen not accept the children? He lost his memories, but he's not heartless, Cole reminded Lucia.
I know, but I lost my last child. I definitely won't let anything happen to them this time. Even if it's Dalen, I won't allow him to hurt the children, Lucia said firmly.
You won't, Cole assured her.
I hope so, Lucia said. That night, Lucia slept on the same bed as Dalen. They hadn't slept like this for a long time, and she even felt very uncomfortable. Lucia didn't know if it was because she had slept a lot during the day, but she wasn't sleepy at all. She quietly turned around and looked at Dalen, who had already closed his eyes. She wondered if he had fallen asleep yet. Dalen's face looked calm and his breathing was light. However, Lucia was still not sleepy. Staring blankly at Dalen's handsome and cold face, Lucia realized that even when he was asleep, he had a powerful charm. It was no wonder that Victoria was so obsessed with Dalen and refused to give up.
Do you need something?
Dalen still had his eyes closed. If it wasn't for the fact that they were alone in the room, Lucia would have suspected that there was a third person speaking. After Dalen spoke, he opened his eyes. Lucia's small mouth pursed in shock. You're not asleep?
Remember that the doctor said we can't be together right now, Dalen teased.
Lucia's face turned slightly red. You're wrong. I'm just thinking about me.
You're staring at my face. Don't you think I know? Dalen asked.
Lucia tensed up. Weren't his eyes closed? How did he know she was staring at him? You think too much. I wasn't staring at you, Lucia argued. Then she turned her back to him and closed her eyes. She had to hurry up and sleep so that Dalen wouldn't really think that she couldn't fall asleep because of him. During the day, Dalen went to the Patrick family while Lucia stayed at home by herself. Lucia also couldn't go to the company anymore for a while. There was nothing more important to her now than the children. Everything became an element of uncertainty and danger to the children. Lucia was in the lobby, watching TV and eating fruit. After a while, John ran over in a hurry. "Miss Lucia, Mrs. Patrick is here." Lucia stopped chewing and said, "Turn off the TV." Linda walked in. Seeing that Lucia was about to stand up, she said, "Please, stay seated." Lucia sat down on the sofa again. After Linda sat down, John made her a cup of tea and waited nearby. "You don't need to wait on me," Linda said, dismissing him. John hesitated and looked towards Lucia for direction. Lucia said, "I'll take care of this. You don't need to." John nodded and left. "What did the doctor say? Are the children okay?" Linda looked at Lucia's stomach, feeling gratified in her heart. There were 2 children in that womb. This was something that had never happened before in the Patrick family. "Well, the doctor said to be careful at home, but the children are safe and healthy," Lucia reported. "Did you eat what I sent you at the hospital?" Linda asked. Lucia didn't expect her to ask such a question. Lucia quickly said, "Yes, thank you." "You know, I'm being kind to you for the sake of the children in your womb. They are the bloodline of my family." Linda spoke her mind without hiding anything. Linda continued, "I also was ready to accept your first child, but I was forced to take it away since it would have been born unhealthy. If these 2 children are healthy, then they will be a joy to me. Do you understand what I mean?" "I understand. Thank you for your kindness," Lucia said, trying not to roll her eyes. Lucia naturally went along with the charade. When Linda was about to leave, Lucia stood up to send her off, but Linda insisted she remain seated. In the end, it was John who walked Linda out. Lucia sat on the sofa, lost in her thoughts. Was Linda accepting her? Because of the children? Did she come here on purpose to say so? What about Victoria? John walked back in and said, "Madame, Linda has brought back a lot of nutrition products. Do you want to eat them?" "I'm not eating what she brings," Lucia said without hesitation. "Whether she's sincere or not, I don't dare to bet on it." "Then I'll throw them out." John agreed. It was better to be safe than sorry. Later that night in the mansion's study, Dalen's face was cold and cruel. He put his phone to his ear and spat out a single word. "Kill." After saying that, he threw his phone to the side and went back to his room. Lucia was sitting on the sofa, watching TV and eating fruit. "How long have you been watching?" Dalen frowned. "Just for a bit," Lucia answered without moving her head. "Turn it off in 10 minutes and go to sleep," Dalen said. Then he turned around and went to the bathroom. Lucia heard the sound of water splashing. She walked over and raised her foot to kick the door to vent her anger. However, she kicked it harder than she intended, and it made a loud noise. Dalen, who was standing under the shower, looked up in anger. Lucia felt that even through the door, she could feel Dalen's bad mood. She quickly sneaked onto the bed. If Dalen asked later, she would say that it wasn't her doing it, that it had nothing to do with her, that it was his own fault. Not long after, Dalen came out with a towel wrapped around his waist, and the rest of his body was exposed. The sight caused Lucia's heart to skip a beat. His washed hair hung down, slightly falling in front of those dreamy eyes. It added to his wild presence, like the dangers of a dark night. Lucia's eyes narrowed, but they still uncontrollably landed on Dalen's exposed chest. His muscles were clear and distinct, and so much terrifying power was contained within each and every one of them. When Dalen looked over, Lucia pretended nothing happened and looked away calmly. Only when Dalen entered the closet did Lucia catch her breath. Who could possibly resist such a person? Facing Dalen's gaze, Lucia came back to her senses. She forced a laugh, looked at Dalen, and asked, "I'm so bored every day. Dalen, can you buy me a book tomorrow?" "What book?" he asked. Maybe a war book, Lucia mused. Dalen looked at her skeptically. What? I want to read one, Lucia argued. Will you understand it? Dalen looked down on her. If I don't understand it, then I can study it. I'm pretty smart, you know, Lucia said. Fine, I'll buy it tomorrow, Dalen agreed. Thank you. After Lucia finished speaking, she slipped under the blanket. Her idea of reading a war book was very simple. She had to learn how to stop Dalen from bullying her all the time. The next day, Dalen sent a book to the mansion. It was indeed a book on military strategies. Just as she opened the first page, Lucia's head hurt, but she endured it even though it was boring. John saw that Lucia wasn't watching TV, but was holding a book instead. He was so surprised that his eyes widened. Miss Lucia, why are you reading that book on military skills? John asked. Well, what's the problem? Lucia countered. John shrugged. I don't have a problem with it, but do you understand it? Lucia raised her eyes from the book and looked at John. Why wouldn't I understand? Let me tell you, I understand super well. Yes, Mum, John said. After Lucia finished, she continued to read and John went back to his business. When he was done, he saw that Lucia had fallen asleep on the sofa and the book was lying on her lap. He could not help but mumble, That book is probably used to put people to sleep. He stepped forward and covered her with a soft blanket to prevent her from getting cold. Blake Nelson was surfing the internet in a hidden cafe. He had a cigarette in his mouth and was typing aggressively. He had been hiding out for weeks. He didn't expect that he would be forced into such a tight corner. Before the job went wrong, he had been following his boss around to find work. But now he was useless, and his mind was still unsettled. He was always worried that he would be caught. That Dalen guy was really scary. Dalen was Boss Tyrone's most capable subordinate, and was now being forced into hiding. He could not even move around the city freely anymore and was running like a fugitive. Originally, their crew wasn't afraid of death at all. However, when the rest of their crew was captured by Dalen's men and tortured so horribly, even Blake and Tyrone were frightened. It was obvious how horrible their fate would be if they fell into Dalen's hands. If they were caught, it would be 10 times more miserable than normal. Blake left his seat and went to the bathroom. Hey, Blake. Someone called to him. Blake paused for a second. He turned around and saw Spencer, who had appeared like a ghost, and he seemed to be the only one there. He turned to run, but Spencer jumped up in a blink of an eye. He landed in front of Blake and grabbed his neck. Where's Tyrone? Spencer went straight to the point. I don't know, Blake stammered. Didn't you see what happened to the others? You should have seen the video by now, right? If you haven't seen it, I can show it to you right now. Spencer's face was still cold from beginning to end. Blake's face was turning red from being strangled, and now he was scared pale. I'll give you 3 seconds to think it over, Spencer said magnanimously. I'll say it! I'll say it! Blake cried out. He's in a private apartment in the country. Spencer looked for the address and found the apartment. When Spencer made it to the apartment, he rushed in, but Tyrone was already dead, and from the looks of it, he had been dead for a couple of days. Spencer walked around the house. There were no signs of fighting in the room, which meant that Tyrone was killed by someone he knew. When Spencer returned to the city, he told Dalen about his discovery and suspicions. In the Patrick family's most authoritative office, Dalen was facing a computer with complicated data sheets on the screen. Spencer looked at Dalen's expressionless face and was unable to guess what he was thinking. Mr. Patrick, it seems like the mastermind killed him to keep it a secret. Tyrone has been killed. Don't you still have Blake? Dalen said in an unhurried manner, as if he was not worried at all. Spencer now understood why Dalen wanted to keep Blake in custody for the time being.
Did you know that Spencer would be killed ahead of time? Spencer asked. What would you do if you were the mastermind and wanted to stop my investigation? Dalen asked. You're right. I'd kill Tyrone. Spencer nodded. Dalen nodded. When investigating, we cannot think from our own point of view. Instead, we have to think like them. Then what if Blake really doesn't know anything else? Spencer asked. Then keep torturing him. I've never seen a mouth tougher than a dead bone. Dalen's dark eyes were filled with danger. In other words, Dalen was sure that Blake knew something about the mastermind. At this moment, there was a knock on the door. Enter. Dalen's voice was low and intimidating. The one who pushed the door open was Robert. Spencer didn't say anything else as he turned around and left. Robert was curious why Spencer was there at such a late hour. Was there something he needed to report? What do you want? Dalen asked. Robert came back to his senses and immediately said, Just now Catherine called and said Victoria is sick again and not doing well. She kept calling your name. Do you want to go and see her? Is there no doctor? Dalen's eyes twitched slightly. Yes, but you know that Victoria's body can't recover that fast, Robert said. Fine, I'll visit her later, Dalen said. Robert left the room after it was clear Dalen wasn't going to keep talking to him. Dalen walked out of the office a moment later and told Spencer, Tell Lucia not to wait for me for dinner. Spencer was surprised that Dalen wasn't going straight back to the mansion. However, he did not ask any further questions and directly relayed the message. Lucia, who was reading her military strategy book, got up to answer the phone after hearing that it was ringing. Hello? Ma'am, there's no need to wait for Mr. Patrick to eat. You go ahead, Spencer said. Ah, got it. After hanging up, Lucia thought, Is Dalen busy? She didn't think too much about it, though, and headed straight for the dining room. After Lucia finished her meal, she walked for a while, and then returned to her room. At this point, Dalen still hadn't come back, so she sat in the living room watching TV. Half an hour later, Lucia's cell phone rang. She took it out and looked at the caller ID. It displayed a number that she did not recognize, so she answered with hesitation. Who is it? The other party did not speak. She could only hear a faint rustling sound. The call was connected, but no one said anything. Just as Lucia was about to ask more questions, she heard a voice say, Victoria? Lucia tightened her grip on her phone. It was Dalen. She immediately understood that this cell phone number was Victoria's. Dalen, I missed you so much. I missed you so much. It was Victoria's voice, filled with pain and weakness. Lucia knew that she should hang up the phone, but her body seemed to have lost its function and couldn't move at all. Then she heard Dalen's answer. I'm here. Lucia held onto the phone like she was holding a red-hot iron. Finally, she pressed on the end button and threw the phone far away. Dalen's low, soothing voice was like a knife cutting her heart. So Dalen went to Victoria's place instead of coming back for dinner. No wonder. Victoria was probably the only one who kept him from returning by pretending to be sick. What was Victoria trying to tell her? She was so delusional sometimes. But then again, Lucia couldn't tell whether Dalen's attitude towards Victoria was intentional or misguided after his loss of memories. Lucia's eyes blurred as she watched her show on the television. Afraid that her bad mood would affect the children in her womb, she stood up and walked to the open window. The cool night breeze blew away all the discomfort in her heart as she took a deep breath. Lucia comforted herself. Didn't she already know all of this? It wasn't the first time Dalen had chosen Victoria over her. All she had to do now was take care of the children in her womb. In Victoria's room, Dalen sat on a chair beside the bed.
Victoria wiped the sweat off her forehead, and the doctor took her temperature again. Dalen asked with a calm expression, "It still hasn't dropped?" "After you arrived, she started to improve," the doctor said quickly. "She's over the worst part of it." Catherine, who was beside Dalen, said, "It seems that only you can be effective in helping Victoria." Dalen remained silent while Catherine tactfully closed her mouth. Then she winked at Jerica and walked out. Victoria's body temperature returned to normal after a few hours of tossing and turning, so the doctor left as well. Only Dalen and Victoria were left in the room. Victoria looked at Dalen as if she had finally woken up. She said weakly, "Dalen, I'm sorry that I asked you to come here. I'm fine now. I'm very happy to see you, though." "Stop talking. Take care and have a good rest," Dalen said gently. "You are here, and I don't want to rest. If I close my eyes, I won't be able to see you. I want to keep my eyes on you so badly that I can't bear to even blink." Victoria paused for a moment, then said, "Dalen, I've not congratulated you yet. You're going to be a father." Dalen nodded. "Yes." The jealousy in Victoria's heart worsened. Dalen actually admitted and accepted her congratulations. It almost made her faint. I thought I could finally be with you. I didn't expect Lucia to get pregnant. Dalen, I want to be with you. You said that you wanted to marry me before. Why can't you marry me now?" Victoria cried as she said, "You said that you would marry me after you divorced Lucia. If it wasn't for your amnesia, we would already be together." This was part of Victoria's lie, trying to convince Dalen that he went to find Lucia for the sake of a divorce, but accidentally fell off the cliff and lost his memories. "If I really wanted to do such a thing, I can still carry it out after I recover my memories," Dalen explained. "Dalen, what do you mean?" Victoria was stunned. "Are you doubting what I told you? If you suspect me, then do you believe in your own mother's words?" She didn't know why Dalen was suspicious. "You're tired. You need to rest." Dalen stood up and left the room without saying anything else. Even Victoria, who was lying on the bed, couldn't understand Dalen's attitude towards her. Did he not believe her anymore? In the past, it was obvious that Dalen was biased towards Victoria and doubted Lucia. Why did it change now? Was it because Lucia was pregnant? When Dalen went downstairs, Robert was waiting. "I heard from the doctor that Victoria is much better now. Thank you for coming over," Robert said. "Seeing that you haven't eaten since you came, why don't you get something from our kitchen? I've been telling the kitchen to keep some food warm for you." "No need. I have an important matter to take care of when I go back." Dalen's eyes were sharp. "Important matter?" Robert asked, hoping that Dalen would continue. Dalen shifted his eyes, tidied up his already smooth sleeves, and said, "The group of people that attacked me when I fell off the cliff. The boss is dead, but I caught his closest subordinate, and I always find ways to help people be more willing to speak." Robert's heart skipped a beat. Who had Dalen found? He thought he had eliminated Tyrone and all the evidence. Is there even a mastermind? That would have to be thoroughly investigated. Whoever dares to attack the leader of the Patrick family, I'm afraid he's going to lose his life, Robert said angrily. Dalen glanced at Robert with his black eyes and asked, Robert, tell me, if I find the mastermind behind this, how should I deal with him? For some reason, Robert immediately thought, Dalen is an executioner. He immediately took precautions. If there really is such a person, we naturally cannot let him go. As for how we're going to deal with him, that will be up to you, Dalen, Robert said. You are being so obedient. This is very good. Dalen put down his hands and looked into the distance with contempt. You should put more powerful energy into our family. Robert bowed his head. You're right. Only then did Dalen leave. Robert straightened up with a gloomy face. Being treated as a subordinate by his nephew was truly worse than death. Dalen returned to the mansion, and after entering the hall, Edward immediately walked forward. Mr. Patrick, have you eaten? The kitchen is always prepared. Dalen's black eyes narrowed as he looked towards the stairs and didn't respond. Edward was good at reading expressions and hurriedly said, Madame has already gone to sleep. Dalen went upstairs and stood in front of the door. A piece of paper was taped to the door. It read, If it is after 9 o'clock, please go to the other room and sleep so as not to disturb me. Good night. Dalen's face was dark. He tore the paper off the door and entered with a cold expression. The moment Dalen entered the bedroom, Lucia, who was sleeping on the bed, immediately felt his presence. She didn't move at all. She just closed her eyes and pretended to be asleep. Why did he just come in? Didn't he see the note she left? Dalen stood in front of the bed, looking at Lucia's figure. Under the light, her white face looked transparent, and her long eyelashes gently rested on her cheeks, casting rows of gray shadows. After a moment, Dalen noticed the trembling of Lucia's eyelashes. It was very subtle, but it still couldn't escape Dalen's sharp gaze. Dalen got into the bed and directly put his hand on her shoulder under the blanket. Lucia immediately felt a chill on her skin. She shuddered and opened her eyes. She curled up, looking at Dalen with both fear and anger. What is it? Can't you see I'm sleeping? I left a note on the door for you. Not only did you come in, you even touched me, Lucia complained. I don't want to be in a fight with you, Dalen whispered. Lucia was stunned for 2 seconds before she understood what Dalen meant. But when she thought about why Dalen came back so late, she immediately became angry. Didn't you go to see Victoria? Why didn't you just sleep there? Lucia asked. What did you say? Dalen's face turned cold. Lucia forced herself to calm down and said, Did I wrongly accuse you? Who told you that? Dalen said coldly. Lucia knew that Dalen was suspicious, especially after he lost his memory. So she took out her phone, opened the call history, and showed it to him. Are you familiar with this phone number? I didn't call her. She called me. Look at the time. Do you understand what's going on? I know exactly where you went and what you did. Whose number is this? Dalen asked. Lucia almost choked. You don't know whose number this is? I don't know, Dalen repeated. Lucia looked carefully at Dalen's emotionless and calm face and said, This is Victoria's number. I heard everything you said while you were by Victoria's side. Dalen's expression didn't change much, but his eyes flashed with a sharp light. So? Dalen's voice was deep and cold. So? Lucia was displeased with Dalen's rhetorical question. Her brows couldn't help but knit together. Compared to you, this is nothing, Dalen said. Lucia immediately understood what Dalen was referring to. She couldn't help but explain again. Axel and I are innocent. You just don't believe me. In my opinion, only by keeping you locked up in the mansion will you truly understand your mistake. Dalen stood up and went into the bathroom. Lucia fell back into the bed, her eyes watery with frustrated tears. Shouldn't she interrogate Dalen further? But would it even be worth it? Even if Dalen was biased towards Victoria, he should understand what Victoria intended after seeing the call history, right? She knew Dalen well. Therefore, even though Dalen didn't say anything, Lucia was sure that Victoria had offended Dalen.